Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the Tuesday, May 6th, Londonderry Utilities Committee meeting to order. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And tonight we have a full house, so thank you to everybody. Thank you to our guests for coming tonight. Before we get into the guest presentation, public comment? Nothing, you're good? Excellent. We're good with that. Still had something to say, but so with that, we're going to get into a presentation by Aaron Holmes and Casey Harding from Pennachuck Waterworks, looking at some long-term strategies, goals, planning, whatever the right adjective is for Londonderry Municipal Water Supply. So welcome, thank you for joining us.
Well, I'll just kind of set the stage, but I will let Casey Harding take over. So I'm Erin Holmes. I'm the Director of Engineering and Environmental Services with Pennachuck Waterworks. That is Noah Waldron. She's also one of our engineers at Pennachuck who's here, and Casey will certainly introduce herself, but she's one of our senior engineers. And again, thank you for inviting us here tonight. We've been chatting with Jeff and John and thinking about your master plan. And actually, we really appreciate the question of like, how would Pennachuck do this if they were going to build out water? So I think that was a great question to ask. It really helps us to start thinking about how water could look in Londonderry. My background, I was with DES for a long time. I was there when Londonderry wrote a letter that said, hey, DES, we've got a ton of contamination that you're doing nothing about. So I'm very aware of your contamination problem. Casey has been very busy in Londonderry for the last couple of years as well. So, we're well aware of all the issues and the priorities that you have with delivering water. And really, what we're presenting today is just to start that discussion. The title of our presentation, what's on the agenda, is just that discussion, kind of laying out some ideas that make sense from a water provider standpoint, some costs that you can think about, but we don't expect any answers to come out. We expect more questions, and we're happy to help you on this journey as you work on this master plan. So with that, I will turn over to Casey Harding, who will take over.
Sure. So to go through this presentation, we're just going to give you a quick background on Pennachuck's role and responsibility. I think Aaron kind of captured that, so I might just breeze through that slide. After that, we're going to go into kind of our decision-making process, so what we really thought about when we first took a look at this. Next will be the build-out map, which you have in front of you right now. So we'll just kind of talk about what all the colors mean, why they're where they are, and just to get a general understanding of the map overall. Then we'll take a look at the estimated cost assumptions. So when we worked on this build out, we had to make some assumptions when it came to cost. We're not mind readers. We don't know what's going to happen in a couple of years, but we had to make some assumptions and somewhere to start. Then we are going to take a look at some specific areas just to talk about those. And following that, we'll go into some costs by the classification, which we'll go into more detail, and then also some high priority costs. And then we'll finish up with the build out approach and kind of what we think could be the next step. So Pennachuck's role and responsibility, again, Aaron said this perfectly. So we're just here providing information, kind of getting that discussion started. And the information we're providing is based on our background, right? So the previous projects that we've had recently, those costs associated with them, and kind of what we think could be the best for the build out. And again, this does not need to be built this way. Aaron and I were talking today. It's kind of like a puzzle, right? If this piece falls, then the next one comes on next to it. You can't just start going over here. So it doesn't need to be built this way, but this is just kind of our idea and our take on it. So the decision-making process. The first thing that we wanted to do was prioritize the neighborhoods east of High Range Road. And the reason we wanted to do that was because when we met with a couple members of the Utilities Committee, that was a big priority. So that was the very first thing we took a look at. Those are the areas with high PFOA contamination and dense property area in potential customer base. The next thing we did was we took a look at those critical and strategic infrastructure and water main locations. So those are basically the backbone of the system. You need to install those in order to reach those other areas. And then the other areas are those zones and individual water main extensions. So they're a little bit less dense, there's no critical infrastructure running through them, and they have lower levels of contamination.
So Casey, when we say we're prioritizing the neighborhoods east of High Range Road, that's really the neighborhoods that are not affected by the consent decree. That's
Right.
correct?
Right.
Yep, so this,
Correct.
so the consent decree is a whole separate
Yes.
project that we're not gonna get into with this.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
So with that, that leads to a great point for the build out of the map. So when you're looking at this map in front of you, you'll see some faint blue lines. Those are our existing water mains. You'll also see some red lines. And I apologize, the red and the brown are kind of close, but hopefully we can make it out. But the red lines are those projects that are planned or currently under construction. So we know that those are gonna happen and be in the ground. The next are the purple lines, and those are those critical and strategic water main locations. And then we also have the pink. So those are what we're calling our opportunity water mains. Those are those priority areas with the high contamination, high density, mostly east of High Range Road. Then we have the brown, which are individual cul-de-sacs that will require an additional main extension to reach them. So you'll need most likely one of those critical water main installations before you could even get to those neighborhoods. And then we have green, which is the St. Gobain consent decree area, which Lynn highlighted perfectly. That's not included in our study at all, but we wanted to show that on the map. And additionally with that is the orange lines, which is the Ross and Tocanel Drive area. So similarly to the St. Gobain area, we did not include that in our analysis. So looking at the estimated costs and those assumptions that we had to make, all of our costs are based on 2025 construction costs, things that we've done this year and last year. The costs do not include any engineering services fees, construction management fees, MSDC fees, or services on private property. It's strictly just the water main cost and the tank and booster station costs.
Excuse me, do you have a rule of thumb? You must, when you're tackling a project and creating a budget, what do you use as a layer over that for these 4 bullets?
So a typical consultant, they can range anywhere between 8 and 12% of overall project costs. Penachuk, we're in a little bit of a different category, so we're significantly lower than that. But I would say between 8 and 12% is the standard.
Thank you.
So what we assumed was that per linear foot, it was gonna be about $500 to construct a water main. Given the size of Londonderry and the breakdown of it, we just had to pick a value and run with that and then associate that to the length of the water main.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
What do the services on private property, what does that actually include?
That's a great question. So we install the water main and then the main to stop, which we call it, of the service. So that's from the water main to the curb stop on the property. Those services on private property are from the curb stop into the home. So those costs were not included in this. And the main reason we did that is those costs are extremely variable. Depending on the ledge, the site that the house is on, the distance from the road, there is just not a good way to quantify that in a study like this. So we left those costs out.
Okay.
And then all tank and booster station costs were based on the 2024 Londonderry project. So I'm sure you're all familiar with Michael's Way and the Gordon Drive tank. So those are the 2 reference points we used for those costs. So the first area that I want to take a look at is what we're calling the northwest section. So this is zones A, D, E, a little bit of Mammoth Road, Litchfield Road, and Shasta Drive for the most part. This obviously hits Zone D, which is the very important high priority area with a lot of contamination east of High Range Road. Some feedback we got from the Utilities Committee was that this was a big target. So we wanted to make sure that we included this, and one thing about this area is that it will require additional infrastructure improvements. So the elevation of Zone D is actually much higher than the elevations around it, so we need a booster to get that water up to that pressure. So that'll be an additional cost of between $1.5 and $2 million to get that water to that area, in addition to the water main costs. You'll also notice that there are some strategic water mains in this area, primarily on Litchfield Road and Shasta Drive, as well as Mammoth Road. So again, those are those backbone mains. In order to install those, you'll be able to hit those other areas like Zone A. There's also the potential additional tank located right outside of Mountain Homes Estates. It's not set in stone that that tank has to be there, but that's been an area that we've looked at for a while due to the elevations. And also we have our existing Mountain Homes Estates booster station there, so we have a good relationship with that development if we were to put a tank there. The next area is the northeast section. So this is really kind of a mixed priority area. You have those general zones where the density is a little bit less and contamination's a little bit lower, but you also have that high priority area with Zone C. Zone C, similar to Zone D, will also require a booster station to get water up to the correct pressure. However, Zone C and Zone D, which we just looked at, have very similar elevations. So we believe that one booster station could serve both, and that could be a cost savings there.
The zones names, that's things that you have
Yes.
assigned.
Yep,
Yeah.
they're arbitrary. They're just, it was a little tricky to kind of slice Londonderry up. So this was the best way that we could do it, and we essentially just used geography and trying to look at it as if we were about to do a major project in this area, how would we break it up? So that's kind of what those zones represent, and that's kind of how we took a look at it. But yes, the names are just arbitrary to us.
Thank you.
Yep.
So Casey, Zone B is up near where I live. There's a couple of water tanks up there now that are owned by Manchester Waterworks.
Yep.
How do you split up who gets what piece of the pie up in that area?
So essentially our franchise area in Londonderry is, the rule of thumb is we serve anywhere Manchester already doesn't. So if Manchester doesn't have water main in the ground on that road, that's technically our franchise area.
Thank you.
Yep. So the next area is Area 3, kind of this Midwest section that we're looking at. This is a very, very busy area. You have infrastructure that's already going to be built, hopefully this year. Then you have those backbone mains. You have some high priority areas. And then you have some areas within the St. Gobain consent decree area that don't currently have plans to install water main. So those are those roads, essentially everything west of High Range Road.
So some of those areas are within the consent decree, but there are no plans to connect them to public water?
Right. St. Gobain, I'm not sure about their whole process and what they've been doing to address those
Okay.
properties. From
Right.
our understanding, it's POETs essentially. Point of entry treatment systems have been installed in a lot of those areas. And that was their way of addressing that. So there's no current water main, no current water main extensions there, but those people do have treatment systems on their wells.
That isn't, okay, that isn't what we've heard.
Oh, I could be mistaken about that too.
Well, some people, I don't know, how many people have those entry point wells and how many don't. But we've heard that most of those people, at least 350 of those houses, are still getting the water but they're getting the water delivered, drinking water delivered. But they haven't been offered yet, and this is part of the negotiations that are apparently going on.
So I think that's a separate area. That's a
Right.
little more north of where we're looking at here.
Okay.
The areas that I'm referencing are Zone N primarily, in that section Zone M.
Yep.
So those two areas, a lot of the homes there have point of entry treatment systems.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to make that clear.
That's still east, isn't it? That's, you say,
West of
West.
High Range Road.
West of Highway.
Oh, yeah.
High Range is
High
the,
Range
if you
is the
look
red
at
line.
the red line that runs up the center
okay.
of that, that's High
Yeah.
okay,
Range.
west,
Red line is
west.
High Range.
Well, this is High Range, okay.
Yeah, that's High Range.
It is a little hard because there are no roads listed.
I know, I apologize. Those got taken off at the last second. It was.
Why? I asked for it
getting-
twice.
It was a little bit busy. Yeah.
I told you, it gets confusing.
All righty.
Excuse me, we've kind of been told to not get into conversation about the consent decree, but what you're saying, Zone N, are you saying that that's not part of the consent decree?
It is.
No,
part, she said.
that is not what I'm saying. That
Well-
is part of the consent decree.
Yes, it is, yes.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
that's what she said.
all the
Yeah.
green is.
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering why, if that hasn't been settled, why we're even talking about that.
Because it's future planning.
Well,
Yeah.
it does need to be in the future plan, absolutely.
It is in the future plan.
Okay,
Yep.
go ahead. Thank you.
Yep. And then area 4 is the mid-east section. So this, contrary to area 3, this has a lot of existing infrastructure. So this is that area along Route 102, 93 runs through it. And you can see that red line there to orientate you, that's Century Village. So that water main work is ongoing. And then you have Zone K, Zone X, and Zone Z as well. So it's a little interesting because there is a lot of existing infrastructure, but there's also these zones that have lower contamination, but could extend water main too. And then the last area is Area 5, so the southern section. This area is very tricky because there is essentially one backbone running through it, which is Mammoth Road, and then the rest of the areas require a lot of build-out. So it has lower PFOA levels, but generally you need that backbone first before you start branching out into those neighborhoods. And then looking at the cost by classification. So I know that the title of that can be a little confusing, but if you follow along with the colors, the opportunity areas, which are those pink areas, those would equal, if you were to build those all today, that would equal around $34 million. The strategic main areas, which are those purple backbones, those would equal around $45 million. The main extension required, those are those one-off cul-de-sacs, those brown roads that you need another extension to get to, and that's around $7 million. And then to wrap that all together, the rest of the remaining zones, so all of those yellow areas, if you were to build water main on every single road in there, it would be about $160 million. And that's again based on that $500 per linear foot cost. And then the additional infrastructure, which are the 2 tanks and 2 booster stations, which I'm just realizing now I didn't cover. We were looking at tanks on Elwood Road with a booster station as well, and that's to feed the High Range Road area. So I can go back if we want. Yeah, so right there where Zone N is, you can see a tank and a booster station as well. And all of that together is between $9 to $12 million. So the opportunity area costs, those are those pink areas. We knew that this was a big priority for the Londonderry Utilities Committee, so we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that and let you know what those costs are with a breakout. So you can see those first couple of streets.
Excuse me, can I just ask, if
Sure.
I understand correctly, none of this can really be built until the strategic areas are built. Is that true, or are there exceptions to that?
No, so that's a great point. So this opportunity area costs, those can all be built. They have access to existing water mains. They have adequate pressures aside from Zone C and Zone D. Those are the ones that require booster stations, but all these other areas listed up on the screen right now could be built as is.
Okay, so the strategic ones are the prerequisite to the rest.
Yes, yes, yes,
And that was
So-
34 million, the pink opportunity areas.
yes. Yep, and that's where this breakdown on this screen, that breaks that cost out a little bit more.
Okay.
So you can see that 34 million comes down to several streets, both east and west of High Range, primarily east of High Range. And then Zone C and D also requires that additional infrastructure in the booster station. And then you have Zone G and Zone O as well.
Are the tanks and the booster stations figured into these figures?
They're on the figures, and then the costs would be in addition to those values. So it would be,
Go ahead.
about $9 to $12 million for that additional infrastructure.
Thank you.
You can see, in that last slide, Casey, that cost is really driven by that Zone D. That is our understanding, the top, one of the highest priorities. That's where you have the highest density of contamination. There's about 300 estimated potential customers in that area, and that's
On those streets that you're looking at right there?
that Zone D, that
Zone D.
14.5 million, that's really driving up that cost. And it's a lot of main. It's 28,000 feet of water main to cover that neighborhood. So, just kind of breaking that out a little bit, so that you can see. And then, obviously Zone G is up there too, but Zone D is really, where we see those high levels of contamination as well.
How do you guys determine the location for the pump station and for the tanks? Like on Elwood, for example, I'm just curious. Like it looks like it's right near the orchard.
Yeah, that
Okay.
is a point of it as well. So that elevation there is
Okay.
around 300.
Yeah.
So the tank, it has a suitable elevation for the hydraulic grade line in that area, and then the booster station would be to serve anything east of that. So it's primarily we look at elevation first, and then
Oh.
potential if it has enough size, and who owns the property as well.
Yeah.
So,
That's great.
yeah, a bunch of factors go into
Yeah, that's
it.
good. That's,
But to start, we look at elevation.
yeah.
And Casey, this list doesn't represent any prioritization, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
just a list of different projects and different road, streets and zones. So
Right.
no priorities here.
Yep.
Other than they don't require any additional supporting infrastructure other than the C and D. But
Right.
that makes, that's why they are priority, because they're low-hanging fruit, to be
Yes.
honest,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Yep, and that's how we looked at it too. And those were really, these areas here were really the first areas that we wanted to target in our study. Because we wanted to take a look at those, because we heard that from you, that those were the most important. So build out planning. So first are really those opportunity areas. So the ones we were just talking about, they don't require any additional infrastructure aside from Zone C and D. And you could build the water main as is in those locations. The strategic water mains, that's kind of the next phase. So if you tackle those opportunity areas, next you would go into those strategic water mains, because you need those in order for the remaining build out. You need those to reach those other areas. And one thing we wanted to note with that as well is that those can be phased depending on where those other puzzle pieces fall. So if you install a strategic water main, then from there you can expand into those other zones. And then you could go back to a strategic water main and then go from there. That is totally your call and up to you. But we just wanted to point that out, that you don't have to do all of these backbones and then start from there. And really, that's all we had for this presentation. If you have any questions, please let us know. And thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.
this is enormously valuable, I think, especially to just initiate discussions with, our town leadership and with potential people that would support the project. And I'm really grateful because this is obviously something that's above and beyond the normal call of duty here, and it's very well thought out and kind. I appreciate it very much.
Oh, thank you. And with that too, I want to say a huge part of this was NOAA gathering a bunch of data. So we can't take the credit for all of this. NOAA did a ton, as well as
Let's drag her in this, right?
Appreciate all of you.
as well as Jay Ganeri in our GIS department as well for putting the map together. So I just want to make sure that they're recognized.
I don't have a sense of time frame. If one were to go do this, are we talking 2 years, 20 years? I mean, do you have a sense at all?
No.
Okay.
I guess, I guess we can talk in kind of general terms. So Casey's working on the High Range Road project that's gonna be breaking ground soon. And she will correct me if I'm wrong, but, installing water main, especially a big transmission main, those backbone mains, is going to go in relatively quickly. When I say quickly, a year, when is that project
Yeah.
gonna be done? But
Yeah.
once you start going out into those neighborhoods, what becomes more complicated are those services. So even the main to stop, so what Casey's saying is getting the service to the curb stop for that home. There's so many variables, as Casey described, relative to the cost. Those same variables also weigh in on the timing. So things sort of slow down a lot as you branch out into those neighborhoods. We can put the main in relatively quickly, so an 8-inch main down some small side streets is not gonna take that long. But once you start putting in those curb stops, the site inspections that we have to do to really figure out, we try to put it in a good location for the homeowner, right? If they are gonna connect eventually, we don't want it running through their ancient rose beds. So, there's a lot of site survey work, NOAA does it, Casey goes out. And so the timing really changes from just laying in water main. And then I'll always say, that's the easiest part. The hardest part is the permitting, the permissions, the plans, just making sure that all of that is in place, or, finding a site for a pump station. Unless somebody's willing to donate their land and be a part of the project, those can be huge hurdles as well. So, it's hard to answer that question. But I think, just thinking of the High Range Road project, putting things in a timing context. So if you said, hey, we wanna focus on opportunity areas, those roads that you presented, how long would that take? We could put a number together, an estimate, and, I think that would be reasonable. But, again, once you start branching out, things change. I hope that kind of answers your question. It's a
No, it
very
does. I
hard
have
question
no
to
sense at
answer.
all, so I was trying to get a sense of what drives timing and all of that.
Yeah.
So, and the presentation was very well done, by the way, so, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned about phasing, this has to be done in phases, obviously it does. But when we look at it from the town's perspective, we look at, what is currently happening, how it's, how it's going to move along and how it's going to be completed. And then there are other things that are also happening by private apartments or whatever that have gotten money to get money to their, and so the phasing is really important, and obviously the cost is important, but the other main connection on the spine coming down, I think, is really critical, and that when we're talking about adding additional booster stations and tanks, yeah, that's something that's going to come and it's going to happen, but we do kind of have to get an idea at what point it's going to be needed. And so we got a lot to think about.
Your remarks about timing makes me wonder, is it possible to get into a cash flow crunch where you sink a few $1 million into a length of main, but you haven't got anybody hooked up for a few years, and so there's no revenue coming in from the investment that you've made. And then is that a risk that Pennachuck bears, or is it a risk that basically all Pennachuck ratepayers are bearing?
That's a great question. So I was chatting with Ray about it. You know, we, Pennachuck, aren't really able to just put in, build it, and hope they come. We're regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, so we cannot build a main that nobody's gonna connect to. Where we do build a lot of new main in Londonderry, it's usually driven by developers who are paying for those extensions. We have several areas that are being paid for by the PFAS Remediation Loan Fund or SRF projects, and they're putting in the main, and we take it over as part of our franchise. So, you know, something like a really large build-out in Londonderry, I imagine would require some PUC involvement, because we wouldn't be pulling any money on that, and it would
Right.
be sitting there empty.
Right.
With no users, and the question we always have to ask is, how does it benefit our existing ratepayers? So when I say that, I think about Michael's Way. We paid a cost share for that tank and that booster station because that we needed it, and it benefits our ratepayers, but the developers put in a huge chunk as well to pay for a portion of that. So our hands are somewhat tied, and so how that structure, you know, again, that's the hard part. Casey can design pipe all day long and get it in the ground, but the hard part would be, would we need to go to the Public Utilities Commission if Londonderry wanted to present a phase? How does it get paid for? Who's paying for it? And things like that. And then when we take it over, is it empty? You know, are people connecting? You know, for like the High Range Road project as an example, you know, we send out letters, and I know we did this, you know, and try to see who wants to connect and try to get that going early in the project. And that same kind of neighborhood canvassing would occur in any type of project. You would want to start getting people at least aware it's happening and on board to commit to that connection.
They always commit when the excavator's outside their house, so.
So I-
Definitely.
Yep.
That was gonna be my question was, have you gotten any response? Have you sent any of those letters yet?
Yes, yeah, so for the High Range Road project, we're actually hoping to start construction at the beginning of June. It's been a very successful project so far. Granted, we haven't started digging yet, so we'll see how much ledge we encounter. But we have sent letters out, and we've requested to do property inspections, as we call them. And it's essentially just to pick where the perfect location for the curb stop is.
Right.
So whether that homeowner chooses to connect or not, we don't want to install it right in front of their leach field and then have to come back and move it later. So we just try to get a general understanding of that.
Right.
So we've gotten several responses on those. We did those inspections, which is great. We would have loved more responses, but as I said, they come knocking when the excavator's out there and they start to realize that the project's starting.
When you say several, what does that mean in terms of actual numbers?
So there was 80 properties along that High Range Road route that we're installing water main on, and I believe we did 18 to 20 property inspections. From those property inspections, most of those homeowners seemed very encouraged to connect.
Is it the case that you cannot force, under any circumstances, a homeowner to connect? Did they always have the option of not connecting?
We definitely do not have the authority to force anyone to connect.
I mean,
so.
do you know from your experience, Aaron?
Some municipalities have a betterment charge that if the line is in front of their property, then they have to connect. So Salem has that, I believe, for their sewer system, when they were developing out their sewer system, was, all right, if you don't connect, you have to pay us a bunch of money. I don't know how that works, you know, in the world of municipal government, but that was what they established because of those reasons exactly. We're gonna invest in all of this sewer and wastewater treatment. We need the customers to be connecting, and so it's called a betterment charge.
So how much is that betterment charge usually?
Oh, I don't know
in
exactly.
Salem?
Yeah.
That's something each
Probably on
town
their
has to
website
pass.
somewhere.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about the betterment charge requirements. I'm talking about what the general charge would be
Oh, the
in,
cost
say,
of the
Salem.
service connection
Yeah.
itself.
Well, I'm assuming the town charges you for not connecting.
Right.
Right, yeah.
And I'm just wondering, in Salem, where you said they had this?
Yeah, I think it's a sewer one.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what it is, though.
You don't
I
know what the
no.
price of.
If your
I
house
just
is
remember
10
it
feet from
came
the,
up and-
if your house is 10 feet from the street, that's X amount. If
I don't
it's,
think it's based on how far the pipe would be. I think it's based on the fact that you don't want to be connected
well,
to.
that's a separate charge, yes. But then when you, I thought you asked if you do connect, how much is it gonna cost?
No.
And that's variable.
No,
You
she
wanna
was
know the other one. Okay,
Right, I
great.
was just curious.
Better,
If you
Betterment charges, it depends on the project and the bond. So there's no set amount. It depends on the number of houses and the amount of the bond. So it varies based on the project, so it's no set amount.
Interesting.
These figures, we mentioned Zone B and Zone C, is that right? Or that were what we call low-hanging fruit? Is Pennachuck willing to invest in running pipes to those customers? I mean,
We
Zone
legally
C.
can't under our tariff. We can't install water main and hope
I-
that people connect. Is that what you're asking?
well, do you believe that those people are interested in connecting? Or has anybody done a survey in that area?
Yeah, we don't know.
They don't know
Martha,
that.
are you willing to connect?
I think I would connect.
Up there, is that where you live?
I think I would, as long as you don't go through my leach field.
Or your ancient roses.
So,
I wasn't on that list.
so I've been working with Pennachuck and with Kirsten, trying to back into that. You know, who are people that are not hooked up to municipal water? And we have a list of customers, and I'm working with Kirsten to get a list of households, and then we're gonna, do cross-reference those lists. So if it's a household without a municipal water thing, we're gonna look at a way to, ask the question, is it
Who's going to do the survey?
the town?
Yeah, well, that's something that once we have the data, we can look at down the road of who's best equipped to do that. Obviously, we have a master plan committee. We have some people who are very skilled at those processes. So once we have kind of an idea of the scope of what we're looking at, and like I said last time, partnering with DES to look at the best way to kind of get that education material out of there.
Yep.
That's something that Jeff and John and I kind of Lynn kind of talking about doing down the road.
I-
But right now we're in the data gathering stage, so we're not in the putting anything out yet.
I just think that is critical information that we need to know
Martha's idea.
moving forward.
Yeah, we're working on it.
I was just curious if you've done an overlay with the DES information in terms of the private well information that they've got, the numbers of private wells, as well as the people who are within the consent decree. I'm sure you have those numbers. But is it possible to do sort of GIS overlay over this map?
We can,
and say-
yeah, we can definitely do that.
And see where besides the consent decree, the other areas in town that
Sure,
have the
yeah.
high numbers?
Yeah, we can do that, and we can get that to you relatively quickly as well. So,
That would be excellent, actually.
We did a little snippet for Jeff before.
It's very
so-
cool, yeah.
Yeah, so we have the most recent data, and it also includes the small community water system, so, yeah, we'll get that overlaid on Casey's map.
That would be
Yeah.
great.
It is very telling,
That's
you know.
that neighbor.
it's
That's not
really
red.
contamination.
And do you indicate which
I could
private
mark this
wells
up
and
and send
which
it out, huh?
isn't?
I don't think the data
mark
gets
this up.
that deep,
Yeah.
does it?
Well, it's
Probably
whatever-
all
it's
private
all-
wells.
It's the properties that have had their wells sampled, so
Right.
whether or not the homeowner is now on a POET or they've been connected, cause some of it is older from a lot, I
Numbers.
think 2020 was when we really hit, when I was with DES, hit Londonderry and did a lot of sampling, so some of those homes might be connected, but, when you look at the neighborhoods, kinda the way we prioritized and identified these areas, it's with the understanding of where that contamination is.
Yeah, it may be a personal anecdote, and so I'm on Bartley Hill Road. And Bartley Hill Road is in Zone C. which is one of the opportunity areas. And all the wells on the road are contaminated, ours included, so I think that's probably why it ended up as an opportunity area. So I'm sure they looked at that data as well.
Yeah, we definitely considered it in this. It's a lot of data, so we opted not to put it on here, but we can definitely do a version with that on here as well.
Okay.
And we'll add the street names too.
Just the main ones, just the main ones. Mammoth Road, is that all Pennachuck or is any of that Manchester?
We purchased from Manchester at a certain point, but that's near, I think we call it Cohos.
Cohos.
Yeah, Cohos Landing is about our meter point.
Yep,
So everything north of that is Manchester and everything
Oh.
south is us.
okay.
Okay.
Yep. So right where, it's difficult to see on this, but right where Rockingham Road crosses Mammoth Road, just about that point is the meter point.
Yeah.
Rockingham was way up there, okay.
Yeah, way
Yeah.
up here.
Is that where the
So
barbecue
it would
place
be
is?
everything south of that.
Is the new water tank listed on here? Not the one near my house, right? That's not on there, right?
Gordon Drive?
Right,
No, it's
no.
not shown on here. We didn't show any of the existing
Existing ones?
booster stations or tanks or anything like that, but, yes.
How difficult is it to site a booster station? And how big, is it a huge building, small building? Is it difficult to site it because you're potentially putting it on somebody's property?
Just
or-
go across the street and go like this. I can see it.
There you go.
Each site has its own limitations and restrictions and challenges. But if you want to take a good look and see what a booster station looks like, I would recommend going out to the Michaels Way booster station. That's our most recent, and it was very well done, and we'd like to replicate that going forward. So that would give you a general idea. I believe the footprint was about 24 by 34. And it was a fairly large size booster station as well. So there's 6 large pumps in that building to supply our 620 zone.
Yep.
No skating allowed.
Yeah.
No skating allowed, big sign.
Right, yeah.
Do you have any data showing when you put a line down a street, how many people don't hook up? Do you have any historical data with those numbers?
Not that we have, but it's something we could definitely look at.
Yeah, we struggle with that question, and I don't know a better way to answer it other than looking at some of your older projects, just to
Yeah.
see what the rate was for
I
people.
think High Range Road will be very telling.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
definitely
I
by
think
the
so
end
too.
of this year, we should have some pretty good data with that, but we can take a look at previous projects as
Okay.
well.
It'd be interesting, 'cause I think people are more educated about their wells and what's gonna cost to put in poets and things like that, so they're gonna start weighing, what's going on here.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and, and we, it's also shown in red, the projects down Old Nashua Road to the Rolling Meadows area, so that's a very large area. I know the state is been working on trying to figure out who along Old Nashua Road wants to connect. Some of those homes are above the New Hampshire state standard, some of them are above the not pending EPA standard, but they are, do have contamination. So as part of that project with the DES leading, they're trying to get others to connect along the way as well. And we're also looking at another project coming down from the South School down towards the backside of Old Country Village, kind of across from Chase Road and then a little bit further down. So, again, there's homes down there. You look at the data, some of them are above the standard, some of them aren't sampled. They denied sampling for whatever reason at the time. And, there's a lot of places like that as well where they have no data. The state still has a fund that is providing grants for people to get some supplemental funding to put in a service connection. So if our main does run across in front of their house, they might be eligible for grant funds, at least until they are gone, and I'm pretty sure there's still funding there. So
So
they
for
can get
this-
some assistance.
I'm sorry, for the service connection, not just the poet in your house.
I think it's 5,000 for a poet, 10,000 for a service
service.
connection.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So.
So when, as we were doing those property inspections on High Range Road, because obviously we were doing both sides, east and west, a lot of the customers on the east asked us if there was funding options, and we pointed them towards that. So yes, as far as we're aware, there's still funding
Yeah.
available and will be for the
Boy,
foreseeable
wrap
future.
that fast.
And the people that you're talking about with connections on that project, High Range Road, are the people who are living right on High Range Road,
Right.
right?
Right. Yep.
Do you track reasons people don't connect? Maybe a tick list of what's the top reason of people don't connect and maybe working down from that?
We don't. I think
Don't wanna
that's a
bill.
really, that could be a good data point for us to get when we send out our service applications. I would say, just based on personal experience, talking to the homeowners, primarily it comes to the water bill. With our new tiered rate, I'm hoping that on High Range Road we'll get more than we have previously, but that's normally the first thing that they point at is the water bill.
And do you offer, I don't know if it's educational or just comparative costs of, hey, here's what your well will cost you over a period of time versus what your water bill is? And is that a favorable analysis, or?
It is, definitely. When you put them to scale, it's definitely much cheaper to have public water. We don't provide any materials like that in our service application, but I think it is an interesting point that potentially we could do that in the future.
Yeah, I think that's
And
crucial.
DES, spent a lot of time, obviously, when this all hit, spending the time to educate people on well water versus public water. And as Casey mentioned, Pennachuck, when we started connecting Litchfield, the water rate was very, very high. Was it over $8 per 100 cubic feet?
At that time, I'm not sure. The highest rate we got to in Litchfield was $9.50 per 100 cubic
Yeah,
feet.
so you can imagine these folks, they have to connect, they're getting off their wells. So all the questions that come up, well, can I use my well for irrigation? Can I wash my car with my well? Because they're like, I want to use as little, potable public water as possible. Pennachuck merged this year in February. Our merge went through with the PUC. So now, what you might have had a bill from Pennachuck East Utility, and who's on PEU here? Is anybody on Pennachuck Water? You are. So yeah, and John. And so we merged, and then basically all of the rates for PEU and another Pittsfield Aqueduct, they all got kind of mushed into PWW, and they saw a huge, about a half of, half a rate down. So, so that conversation starts to lose weight or stops holding water,
No pun intended.
Because, now you're bringing it down to like a very reasonable cost. It's also a tiered rate. So if you are a single resident family, the rate is really structured. If you're a normal water user and you're not filling everybody in your neighborhood's pool, you're gonna pay that lower rate. As soon as you start using more and more water, then you might bump up into a higher tier, but it takes a lot to get into that higher tier. And then we've also created, ways to kind of weight it differently if it's a multifamily, commercial use, things like that. So it really does change the narrative quite a bit on the cost piece. And then I know the DES has spent a lot of effort in the last year or so with the Drinking Water Groundwater Bureau to talk about people, about the cost of water. It's pennies compared to buying gallons of water or buying new Brita filters or putting a filter into their refrigerator, and trying to build that trust in public water. So they've done a lot of campaigning. So a lot of those handouts, all that information really would come from the DES. I don't know how the optics would look if Pennachuck's like,
yeah.
hey, join us and give us money. Like, I don't know if that's our place to try to educate people. We can educate them on the quality of our water, on our service, on our support for making sure, people have clean, safe drinking water. But I would really lean to the DES to provide that other part of that conversation of how do I decide? And I think when we did, I don't know if you were here, when we came and presented, there was a water conference at the high school.
Yes.
Yeah.
You remember
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Yes.
I think Amy Russo from DES put together a really good handout that compared different poets to public water, and so they have generated those materials at the state level. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it was.
Feels like yesterday.
Yeah, it does feel like yesterday for us.
That's something
March
we're trying to
2024.
work on ourselves, to educate the general public, So,
Yeah,
we're trying to figure out the best way to do that, right?
yeah.
Quick question. I was duly impressed by your facility, and we made that visit. Does the state or feds have a rating systems on filtration plants, companies, things like that?
For like a personal, private,
No, I just mean
Water
like
treatment
this
plant.
system ranks as a Class A, this is a
mean,
Class B, this is a Class C.
Their system?
Not necessarily. I think there's certain like programs you can opt into to kind of fall into one of those rankings. I don't believe we participate in any of
All right,
those.
I was just curious.
But there is a tiered system within the state just based on grade level. So we're a tier 4, which is the highest, most complex treatment plant that you can have within the state.
That's what I was wondering. That's worth
Yes.
advertising.
Yes, yeah, and then it drops down to that below, which is tier 3, which I think the separation is filtration. I'm not really sure where it drops down below that,
Just
but
good to know and advertise, maybe.
Casey, can I ask you guys, when you were thinking about this build out, I know primarily you were thinking about the contamination and really providing drinking water so that we could have healthy from contamination. But one of the things that I'm thinking about as this is going to be, long-term plan, what should we be thinking about in terms of potential changes in water supply for those who would not be some of the people who would be early on this? Are there issues that we can foresee? And I don't know if we have this data, but are there like water supply issues for those of us who, I'm in zone T and I would not be one of those. I would be one of the last ones. So those of us who would remain on a well system for a long period of time, are there water supply issues that are coming? And I'm thinking not just I'm thinking about primarily thinking about changing climate conditions, but also with all of the development that's happening, where more people will be drawing from our groundwaters.
it's a great question. So right now we purchase our water in Londonderry primarily from Manchester Waterworks. We have an agreement with them to purchase a certain amount of water on an average day. And with that allocation, we feel very comfortable with our existing infrastructure, the planned or under construction, and then the St. Gobain area and the Ross Canal, and a little bit more build out from that with our existing agreement. Once we get to that point, it's kind of like a tipping point, and we'll either have to look at negotiating a new capacity with Manchester Waterworks and or potentially coming from the west from Nashua. There is a project ongoing now looking at a new river crossing coming into either Litchfield or Hudson from our Nashua treatment plant. So we're looking at that, but that's very long-term, making it all the way to Londonderry. And it's kind of like those pieces again. Will we need that demand before we're all the way in Londonderry from the west? Then we'll have to renegotiate. Will we already be here when we hit that point? So it's kind of those puzzle pieces that we'll have to figure out when the time comes.
Yeah, so, our supply, I think we've worked really hard to build a redundant, supply, at least from our Nashua plant as well. But I think what you were kind of asking more was about personal private wells and issues they might face in the future. Is that?
Yes, yeah.
So, I mean, contamination is always a huge driver. So, I think one of the old assistant commissioners used to always talk about what's next. So there's always that possibility. I think when you think about other factors, environmental factors, think back to 2016 and 2020 droughts, how did how did it go in Londonderry? We know in, Wyndham and places like Plastow, they have very little water. Plastow, the reason we ran a water line all the way to Plastow, they had no source of supply, they had no groundwater supply, and so and then they had contamination. So, are people's wells going dry? So that's a big thing, is how did it go when we've had these long periods of drought? So where's the resiliency in your well? So we have resiliency because we have a couple of supply ponds, we have a river, we can go back and forth, we can change our water, change the quality of water coming in, which, you know, we can optimize and make our treatment more efficient. And I had to do this, I grew up in Wyndham, my parents had to put in a new well, because our well went dry when they started doing a bunch of home construction up the street. So, you know, your well is more vulnerable. That's why if you don't maintain it, if you don't test it, you know, people be like, oh, I tested it, you know, 20 years ago when I moved in. It's like, have you tested it since then, you know? And so those are the things that people don't start, they don't really weigh into that decision of do I connect or not. But there are always factors that are out there, and I think that's where, you know, a public water supply is robust. It's got built-in redundancy.
It's also regulated, whereas your private wells are not regulated, as you're
Correct,
pointing
yeah, the
out.
state, you know, when the drought hit, you know, at the state level, we provided funding to the low-income families, well below MHI to help them get water. But, you know, they were suffering so badly, and they were losing their wells, you know, so you never know. There's no crystal ball. Like, your well might be the most producing, and the people in your neighborhood, that could change. And, you know, certainly as development occurs, or you put more straws into that aquifer, in Wyndham, they've seen this where contamination starts to migrate into, well, my well was fine. Well, that's why you have to test your well every couple of years. And so, you know, those factors should get considered. And, you know, even though your neighborhood is not the highest priority, again, we heard the highest priority is getting water to our contaminated homes. It's a strong consideration, and if the town is looking at a full build-out, they should be considering it. Moving the needle on the residents might be a little more challenging, because they're not gonna see that value in the public water, because they have a well today that works fine, so.
But if they see what their if they see what their levels of contamination are, and they understand that there could potentially be health costs for their kids under 18 years old, or the elders in that household, that might make a difference.
I mean, I'll put a bid in for, you know, arsenic, people, you know,
Yeah,
that's- like,
exactly.
arsenic is really bad in drinking
Exactly.
water, and, you know, that's a hard one to move people to as well, and it's, you know, but again, as, at the state level, they don't regulate your well, all they
Right.
can, you know, all they could tell you is test it.
It's not only that, you have artesian wells that are 400 feet that are now in the 30th year, and they get what they call interlayer silt, right?
Yeah,
So that's the next
then
problem.
you need to go out and do maintenance. And,
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And you have to do a blowout, put packing in. By the time you're done with that, you've just exceeded the cost of hooking up.
Yeah.
Or you live up on Hovey Road where it's so high, thus a water tank, that 7 houses have been hit by lightning.
Wow,
Wow.
wow, so your
The na-
well, you
The
know.
neighbor across the street on the 3rd hit, and it wiped it out. No, I'm hooking up.
All right, write down John, you got
Wow.
John.
Yeah.
It wasn't mine, but that's okay. I hooked up real early.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to consider, and, you know, certainly from the planning level, it's a lot for you to consider, you know, and I think, you know, the survey idea, I know when I was at the state, we talked a lot about that in Londonderry, is like, you know, what's the pulse? You know, what's the appetite? And it's gonna be different from your contaminated areas to your uncontaminated areas.
Right.
But that's where that outreach, the education, you know, that you all or whomever is kind of tasked with that, you know, whatever Londonderry's goals are over the next 10 to 20 years, so.
Well, I did want to mention, just since we're talking about communication, getting information out to people, that there is actually, this book has just been written, it's called They Poison the World. It's by a woman, she's an investigative reporter. She's not science-based, but she is investigative, and she has done a lot of work on this. She's basically looking at forever chemicals. And she's speaking on this Thursday between 7 and 8:30 at the Merrimack Historical Society. And that's 10 Depot Road. And it's being sponsored by a lot of organizations, environmental organizations in the state. And she'll be speaking at a couple of different places, but she does talk about southern New Hampshire and St. Cobain in the book, so, as well as a variety of other places. But So I think as more and more of this information comes out and people read it in their newspapers, their local papers and books, and hopefully if they can go and see people who've done the research and the work on PFOA and PFAS, it will help get the word out more.
And that presentation is gonna be online as well.
Yeah, will be.
Better.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
so you can just
Yeah.
sit in
Yeah,
your
I
study
know.
with your beer and,
yeah, you
watch
can
it
do
on
that
Zoom.
too. But it's
Oh, that sounds
better,
even better.
it's always better to go and ask the questions.
Right, yeah, but,
Can you
Ask
bring
the
beer?
questions.
Send that around, just so I'll have it, the link.
So-
yeah, if I'll
I
have
can
to-
send it to you. I sent it
Dan's
to
got it.
these guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Anson,
Yeah.
so that was gonna come up real quick. I wanna put that on Facebook, but I wanted to make sure I didn't just go off and start throwing things on Facebook.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it at the right
After we're
time.
done with Pennachuck.
But it looks great. It looks really cool.
But I guess one question I have is prioritization of the various projects and zones. Who makes the decisions? Is it Pennachuck? Is it Pennachuck and Londonderry, Pennachuck, Londonderry, DES? How do we decide how to go forward?
Whoever's paying
Yeah.
the bills.
We're paying the bills.
Right.
So,
Yep.
I would say that would, Pennachuck and Londonderry, for
Yep.
sure. We are partners in this project, so,
Yep.
Casey and I know are kind of wrapped into it now, so. But, obviously, it's a partnership, just like the High Range Road project that Casey's working on and managing. DES, they're, obviously, everything we do, all of our plans, everything gets reviewed by DES, but they've been invested, they've spent a lot of time with Londonderry as well. So, I think they would look at any movement that starts to bring water outside of the consent decree is all positive. They've funded projects. They're on your side. I'm working with them on that South Road extension to figure out how we can just get that in the ground. Pennachuck is going to be taking over that project, and we'll be laying water main in there to get to our Pine Haven system and then to OCV, Old Country Village. So, I'm on the phone with DES all the time, like, okay, send us a letter, and then this is how much, and how much money, revise the cost, and so they're your partners too, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
We gotta figure where the money's coming from,
Yeah.
okay? Because
Yeah.
if, to expect to put it on the backs of the ratepayer, the taxpayer, that kind of figure, that kind of money ain't coming. So it's gotta come from somewhere, and we've already gone to DES and got $8 million and others monies, which is allowing you folks to move forward. But, looking at a long-term plan, we're looking at potentially, in another 20 years, having municipal water throughout the whole town, and how's that gonna happen? And where's the money coming from? And in what phases is it gonna be done?
I mean, that's, we're working with the town of Wyndham right now, and, Wyndham has been it's a long story there about trying to get water in. They've had some small wins, in the past where they voted to pay, raise and appropriate money for the MSPC charge for their allotment, from the southern New Hampshire, but, every town, it struggles with that, and that is probably the hardest part, is where does the money come from? And, if you're gonna raise it in taxes, is your tax base, do they have the appetite for that? That's where the survey is really good too.
Yeah, part of the, we've talked about this, I want to say quite a bit, but I'll say a bit in the water subcommittee. And the process of getting the build out, that's, this is step one, is, what do we need, where are our problems? And, if the answer, who knows what the answer is going to be, but if the answer is we call up and get the money from the DES or the federal government or from whomever,
Or from
whoever,
3M or
or,
DuPont.
or whoever, yeah,
I mean, if the
or,
town decides to sue those companies.
yeah, with the first, yeah.
We're
I'm
for
agreeing with-
Volkswagen.
So, but the first step is to say, we can't just say, hey, we need $250,000, $250 million because we want water. We have to say, well, we need $250 million because we're gonna do this, this, this,
Yeah.
this, this, this,
Specific
this.
plan.
And by the way, we don't need it today. We need $50 million today because we have a $34 million build out for these pink zones. And we also have $6 million for the for the power, for the pump station and the tank. And this is exactly how we're gonna spend that $50 million. It's 34 for this, 7 for this, 12 for that. That's phase one. Then we need another $15 million for these dark purple strategic water mains. And then we're gonna start that in 18 months or 24 months. And so this is the first step of having a sequenced plan for someone who's got a big checkbook that we can say, this is what we would do with X million dollars.
So add to that, so, and by the way, I thank you three for putting up with Jeff and I and the million questions we've been having.
Yeah, this is very informative for us.
And that's, I agree with Jeff, but I'm looking like one step further for publicity and focus, and that is, we're doing it. Wyndham's doing it.
Yep.
Concord's doing it. And what I'm gonna try to do in the next 6 months, sort of get all these towns together, and you can help me along, because I wanna put a price tag on what it's gonna cost the state to fix this problem.
Yep.
It's a statewide problem. What is the 5-year cost to get us from now to 5 years from now?
Yep.
If we put a number on it so people can understand, oh my goodness, this is really a serious problem. Instead of each one of the towns trying to fight a little bit, which we still have to do, but I'd like to see some kind of focus get up to the State House. And then our senators and our reps then go to the feds or whatever they need to do. That's my thought.
Well, we had a regional water commission
Yes, we
with
did.
all these towns, 10 towns involved,
Yep,
and it kind of went by the wayside.
yep.
We need to look at that again, absolutely.
If it isn't obvious by now, one of the worst things that ever happened to the London area was when Erin left DES. But one of the best things that happened is when she landed at Pennachuck. So, thank you.
It's all of us working together.
And I'm sure you,
Work together, that's what I do.
and I'm sure you're aware that we've had kind of an interim town manager situation for the last number of months. That's gonna be resolved 1st of June.
June 2nd is his first day in the building. That's Monday, June 2nd. So by your next meeting.
Yep, and I'm gonna be meeting with him. Kirsten's setting up a meeting between him and myself, and this will be number one on my priority list with him, is to start doing some planning. I mean, we gotta start prioritizing some of these projects, pricing some of these projects, and then looking for the money.
Yep.
You know, I don't see any other way going forward other than doing that. And,
Don't open up with the 200 million, though. It's the
Yeah.
first day. I mean.
Yeah.
Don't
Take
make
small
so
bites.
coffee,
Well, Congressman Dunn guaranteed he could have it by the end.
Governor Dodd.
Governor
Not
Dunn,
quite
yeah.
there yet.
Wow, you got promoted, Ron.
That's next year, next year.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm kind of curious, you mentioned for Zone C, D, and O, it would be about 160 million. And I guess I'm wondering, for the whole town, and this is, I'm sure you're gonna get asked this question, for the whole town, based on your analysis, what would the cost be to hook up everyone in the town with public water?
I would go,
Excuse me?
I would probably look at this slide, and that's everything in the town.
Okay, so you just add all those numbers
yeah,
up. Got
yeah.
it.
200,
That's
200,
water main on.
240, about
250?
About 250, about
Got it.
250 plus
250
another
million or
50 to
so.
75 for per house hookup-ish.
Yeah, it depends, it really depends. It
Yeah.
can be 10,000, it can be 20, 30, but, it really depends on the property.
So another bucket, yeah.
And these are today's dollars too,
Right.
right? Yep, so, big thing to remember. Can we get a copy of this presentation, or?
Yeah,
I already got it.
please.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
our action will be to overlay PFAS in a legible format and put a couple of roads on there for John. Live in London, do you?
You said it, not me,
We're
Erin.
trying to figure out where is my
What
house?
did I told you, I know where the roads sound like. People come to say, what is that on the map? What is that on the
We're
map?
gonna put, where do you live up by Gordon Drive? We're gonna make sure your house is on here, John.
A little icon.
I might suggest, if you want to segment the map in quarters so you can blow it up, and then people can put it together, that way it might be a little bit easier, okay?
John, did I just hear you volunteer your yard for the water tower?
Yeah, there you go.
They have a water tower up there.
Not only that,
That has good
I have,
elevations for an elevator. too.
Saying.
I have a blowout line for them in my yard. And I keep on telling them to aim it for my lawn, and they don't. They shoot across the street.
So I wanted to thank you guys for coming out. You've
Yeah.
met with
Absolutely.
us a couple times at your location, and then, you're coming here in your evening.
In conference calls.
Yeah, and conference calls. Thank you so much for all the above work. Hopefully we'll, be able to add a couple $100 million to your balance sheet
Yep.
if we do the correct things, and it'll make it all worthwhile for you all.
Actually, we're keeping them employed. Do you realize that?
No, from the staff side, Aaron, Casey, Noah, I really want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your night and echo everything that Jeff just said.
Lynn's got a checkbook.
We have a pretty amazing partnership with you guys, and I know that our new town manager is going to be excited to continue it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, thank you very, very much.
I want to say
Excellent.
thank you too, and for very impressive all-female delegation. Go tell your boss that. Very impressive.
We're taking over Pennachuck.
I believe that. I believe that.
John, did you hear that, John?
Oh, is he on the phone?
Great group of engineers, yes.
There you go, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, boss, Kristen over there, Kristen?
Well, I'm not in charge of
Are we-
anything. I don't know why
are
you
we-
keep saying
are we
that.
on the air?
What?
Are we on the air?
Yes.
We're being
Yeah.
taped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not live. We're
I know,
being
but,
taped.
okay, we're not live, but we're being taped.
Yeah.
We are being recorded, yeah.
Oh, thank goodness.
I mean, the microphones are,
Yes.
but it is being recorded. Yep, see got the little green
Otherwise,
lights.
it'd take me 10 hours.
No, Tuesday nights we're not live because there's usually school board meetings on Tuesdays, and so that takes up the live bandwidth and the live recording, and so these are recorded and put up later.
Thank you.
But Drew and Aaron do a fantastic job.
So the
so-
mics aren't on? Or are they?
No, the mics are on. I'm just saying the mics are,
See the little green light?
We're not live.
we're not live.
Video
No,
isn't
but
on.
it's being
Yeah, the
recorded.
video.
Yes.
The video is
The
not
video
on.
and the audio is being recorded, but it's not being sent out.
Yes.
That's a nice thing
Yeah.
to say.
But it will be
That's just
available.
the audio, and no video.
Okay, moving on. So I thought that was very informative and a lot of food for thought for going forward. Ron? I think-
Speaking of females,
Yes, we,
sometimes females are more forthcoming.
Thank you. I wouldn't go there. Go in there.
Oh, why not?
And we'll move on down the path.
Sometimes.
So moving on to administrative board work.
Can I just ask a question of Ron, because
Sure.
I'm curious? Do you know what the status is now of the negotiations?
I do, but I can't say.
Well, can
That's
you
what you
tell us
always
whether,
say.
can you tell us whether we're getting close to a resolution?
I-
That-
It's in progress, that's all I can really say.
Go do
Yeah,
it.
that
Yep.
doesn't.
Yeah.
The line is that the,
Yeah.
nego-
Yeah.
the
Say
negotiations
something.
are
Yes.
ongoing and everybody's coming to the table in good faith and the
Yes.
Yeah, I
negotiations are
got that,
ongoing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I used to do union negotiations, and there was certainly a certain amount of confidentiality, but not to this degree.
Oh, this
So
is definitely-
interesting.
Why?
Exactly.
So I think we're going to move on.
Yeah.
Now, let's get the why. I'd
No,
like to hear
no,
the
no, we're
why.
going to move on, folks.
No, I
Take it
think this
offline.
is-
If you want to
But this is
pursue it,
kind
please
of
take.
important for those 350 people
It is,
who are
but
within
this
the
is not the
consent
venue for
decree.
that. This is
Excuse me?
this is not the venue for that conversation. That
It's
con-
not
no.
for the public to know, or those people
Nope,
with.
not at this point in time.
300
So with the
close.
new law, just file a freedom of information request.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. And with that, we're going to move on to administrative board work. Do we have any comments come back on minutes, John? We set with
No, actually.
April minutes, so
I didn't have a thing to say.
they were perfect. They were perfect.
I make a move to accept the April minutes. Well done.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
No second? And we have a full board here tonight, so we have 7 voting members, all in favor. Who seconded that? Jeff?
Did.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are approved unanimously.
Kristen, since there's no edits, you're just gonna take and post the other one, or want me to just send you a final?
Nope, I'm just leaving the one that's up there up.
There you go.
Discussions with staff. Kirsten, any news from Town Hall?
Yeah, I got a couple of things. Casey and Aaron alluded to it, but the High Range Road water main is still on target, chugging along. The environmental review came back with a finding of no significant impact. So Batman moved on to other, as you know, there's a bat habitat that it overlaps, but everything was ruled perfectly fine.
Oh, what?
Bat, long-eared bat.
Got it, thank you.
So it's now into the public comment period with New Hampshire DES, and the equipment's been ordered. Everything's moving along well, and construction will start as soon as that public comment period ends. And you will hear more about that as we move towards it.
Kirsten, is there a federal component to the permitting?
No, not for this. There's no federal grant for this. If there is, there's federal requirements, but there's no federal comment period.
Or review?
No, it's state review on this one. Yeah,
Army
because
Corps of
there's no.
Engineers?
If
Army
there's no
Corps of
money-
Engineers is not involved?
I don't know if Army Corps of Engineers is involved in the project in general, but they don't need to be part of the environmental review, no. It's all done through the state. It's posted on the NHDES website. Other projects we have underway definitely have federal review, but not this one. And then I do have a very brief update on the Ross Tokenal area and from the EPA. We are actually looking at dates. I don't have anything fixed yet, but we're going back and forth on some dates for those public meetings that they alluded to on the interim remedy. So we're getting very close to publicizing those. So we're working back and forth with Cheryl and Aaron and Renee from DES, and we're getting there.
Not getting phone calls back from those guys.
Yeah, they're pretty
Figure out
busy.
What's going on. Well,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, they're pretty busy right now. But they are, we have a date range that we're looking at that's coming up we're looking the next 30 to 60 days. Basically, we're trying to find a time that's going to work best for everybody, or as many people as we can. And so you'll be hearing more about that as soon as I have it fixed.
Did they come out with the interim report? Because that's
That
what
is
I was
they're in the final stages of getting final approval on it.
Okay.
So once that comes out, there's 2 different meetings that'll be held. There will be basically a public meeting, a public discussion about it, and then an official public hearing. So those are the meetings that those are the 2 meetings that will happen likely here. So we think this room has enough capacity, so. And like I said, as soon as I know that, I will let you guys know. We're just trying to work out the details. And before that happens, we also want to make sure we bring into it our new town manager. As we said, Sean Mulholland, our new town manager, he'll be in the building full-time starting on June 2nd. As you know, Chief Bernard has done an amazing job in the interim, as did Director Salidas before him, and the way that Assistant Town Manager Karen has stepped up through all this. They've been wonderful. But Sean is definitely hitting the ground running. And so we're really excited to have him, and I know he's excited to meet everybody here. To that effect, I just wanted to plug something else that we have going on related to Town Manager Mulholland coming on, is that we have a Meet the Town Manager on May 27th. There's a session in the morning from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and in the evening from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. That's Tuesday, May 27th, over in the police station community room. It's an informal meet and greet, so I encourage anybody who's around that day. I know it is the day after Memorial Day, but swing by, meet him, chat with him, and introduce yourself. And like I said, I know he comes from the city of Lebanon is a very infrastructure-rich community. They're, unlike us, where our bigger population is here at night, they have more population in town during the day. So it's a little bit different. So I think he's going to bring a really valuable and unique perspective to our conversation about infrastructure. So I really look forward to seeing what we all can learn from him as well. So yeah, May 27th, put that one on your calendar.
Do you have to, are you guys preparing briefings for him, or? is
He
it
has
getting-
he has this transition in hand. So he's getting the information he needs from the people he needs it from.
Yeah.
He's got schedules on what he's going to do moving forward. Of course, right now, Chief Bernard is our acting town manager right now, and so he's the one running the show now. But I think as soon as Sean Mulholland comes in, you're going to see his immediate effect moving forward. So yes, he is getting all that information he needs.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Often you get new people and they want written briefings on different issues.
Yeah, and he is
Like you guys are doing, it's more presentation and more.
not necessarily. He's a very technology forward person. So it's I mean exciting for me. Because you guys all know that I'm kind of a tech nerd, but I think it's going to be, he will absolutely want to hear what everybody has to say and what everybody's background is and what you're contributing. He's very passionate about becoming involved in the community. He's in the process of relocating to the area, so.
Are we I'm just wondering, are we gonna wait until he comes in and, wait till he makes his decisions on how we move forward with a lot of this? Or are we gonna proceed along?
In terms of, is there anything
Well,
specific,
okay,
Ray, that you're looking
in
at?
terms of, the general public, and the EPA and Ross and Tocano.
So with that, I think he's coming in at just the right time because he's coming in just as that interim remedy is coming forward.
Well,
So- Yep, so he's gonna come in at exactly the right time to be at the forefront of that next step.
So we're gonna wait for him to make a decision.
Well, it's not so much he is going to be part of it moving forward, but the timing is working out, like I said, perfectly. So that when everybody's coming together right before those meetings, that's gonna be after he's here. So, because like I said, we're looking about 60 days anywhere in the next like 30 to 60 days to schedule that meeting, which puts him in the building.
Would we
Yeah, there's a
get
lot of work
copies of the interim
What?
report, or
We gotta
would
come
it be
to first
placed
and
in
second.
libraries
There's a lot of
so
work and a lot of
citizens
prep and
can
planning
look
before we
at
get
that
our
and
thumbs
read
up,
the
thumbs down.
interim?
We're gonna have, when
this
it's
is
ready
better.
for publication, it's going to be on our website as well as the EPA's website.
Okay,
Yep, so we'll have it in a section on our website as well when it's ready. It
okay.
has not been published yet.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
got it. It's-
You said
it's still
Central Fire Station?
Police
For the
station.
me- For the meeting with?
Police
who
station.
is it?
No,
Police
police.
station, so the community room right over there.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah, right, I'm just hesitant to put forward a firm date I'd rather wait to put forward a firm date when we have a firm date rather than throw out the potential ones and confuse
Okay,
people.
I'm not trying to push the issue, but, I mean, we've been waiting since last fall,
Yeah.
okay? And,
Let me put it this way.
Pardon?
Let me put it this way, the dates that we're looking at for the meetings are already after he's here. So we're not waiting on him, it just happens to, the time period happens to overlap
Works out
perfectly.
Because
Yep.
with his arriving, then.
We're still gonna have the meeting.
Yeah, the meetings are gonna be in,
Meeting's gonna happen.
yep,
Is that what you're?
we're not waiting
No,
for
no,
him, no.
There's a requirement that happens, okay?
Yes.
Yes.
The EPA's a requirement,
A
a
public
federal
comment
requirement,
period. Yeah, it's
that
public comment.
happens to inform and include the
Yep.
general public in
Yep.
the decision-making.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So when they're anticipating it's getting
When?
through,
It's gonna
There'll
be
two
scheduled
public
in the
comment
next
meetings.
30 to 60 days.
and he will be here within 30 days, so.
good.
Right.
Yep, so the timelines, like I said, just by happenstance dovetailed perfectly. So it works out.
Yeah, well, we've also made a bit of a commitment to those folks that said the town will do everything in its power to try to assist them. And I guess we're trying to do that, but we can't do it all by ourselves.
We are moving down the steps in the order that they need to be taken,
Thank you.
definitely, for sure.
Anything else?
I'm good, I've talked long enough.
Actually, you got two other ones.
I do?
Yes, you met with myself and Jeff
I
regarding.
I was gonna let you guys talk
Yeah,
about
you
that.
talk about it, go ahead. All right. I guess-
So we're, all
Nobody
right,
wants to talk about
so,
it, so
never mind,
next
I'll do it.
item.
All right, so I did meet with both Jeff and John separately to discuss our communication plans. And actually, I have an update to that based on my subsequent kind of conversations with IT about the future direction. We're looking at trying to create a asynchronous communication portal on using our Microsoft 365 tools for you all. So you can have to-do lists, you can have a repository of documents. It's likely going to be, we're looking at SharePoint, Planner, Teams combination. We have a little bit of legwork to do to set that up, but as soon as that's set up, you guys get to be the fun piloter for the boards. As we try and incorporate more of these 365 tools that we have paid for and subscribed to as part of this subscription, we want to use those to enrich our communications and make all of y'all's life easier.
You mentioned SharePoint, we're not gonna use Teams then?
Both.
Oh,
They're
we are
like,
gonna
they're
both?
so integrated now.
They are.
Yeah.
So one thing that she emphasized to both of us is, you know, I'm gonna try to make it so easy when you guys wanna find a document, it's in the same place.
Yep.
The only thing is, there are legal requirements around, well, if I give you a directory and I edit that directory, well, then we've gotta do an audit type thing. However, I can also just send you a document via email that you can put on your desktop, and it'll link to all those without putting that document in the directory.
Kind of, yeah.
Right, kind of.
We just can't keep creating new documents every
That's
time we update things. That's the trick. So we're looking at like a file repository. And again, this is the direction that we're going to be moving anyway. So what we've talked about in the last meeting is the general direction we want to go. So you guys are going to you guys deal with some of the most amount of documents outside of the land use boards and the council. So it's a good place to kind of pilot that. And you don't deal with anything confidential for the most part. So it will be a really good, I think it'll be a good experiment, and we'll get cracking. And I like the,
I'm envisioning documents that you presented
Yeah.
for background stuff, that
Right,
goes in the
that's what
directory.
I'm wondering
Yeah,
about.
backgrounds you guys have on sewage, the old master plan, the Lebanon master plan, documents that we want to reference instead of, I gotta go find the damn thing, it's click, and
But
there it
it's
is.
a link to.
A
That's
link
great.
to.
yep. And so also, for example, Anne, last year we had a conversation about, these news articles, right?
Right.
That you want to put on, that we're not going to publicize through our town media, but that you want to be able to share with people. You can have you can drop links in there,
That's great.
and it doesn't create a record that we have to preserve. It's, a link to a separate article.
Yep.
And so and I'm very cognizant. In fact, I just redid another 91A training today just to kind of brush up with the most recent laws and changes. And so the goal of this is to create a 91A friendly, public friendly. So if anybody wanted to come in and sit down next to us and look at it, it would be completely public friendly. That's kind of the idea that we're working towards with this, is how we're going to store your documents moving forward so that they live in a centralized place. It's easier for us to respond to 91A requests, and it's easier for you to find the information that you need.
But you can't edit these documents, they'll be read only.
We'll get to that nitty gritty later. That's a whole separate training. We don't need to worry about that one now.
But do people want to get sort of public information that's already been put out there on PFAS or PFOA? Do they can they go to the website and then go to click the link, or do they
So
have
this
to
is
file?
separate then. This is a document for your files as a committee.
Right.
Different than the public facing one,
Got
yeah.
it,
There won't be anything on there that the public couldn't see or request to
right.
see or anything, but again, because it's a document distributed to a quorum of the board, so it becomes a
Okay.
public record.
Right.
But this will just be more a repository, an organized repository of documents for you and a way for you to manage tasks amongst yourselves.
Okay.
So you can see what everybody is doing,
Oh, okay.
so.
Yeah, the Microsoft has a planner tool, which is basically a task manager. And it's good because there's a lot of things going on. And I try to take as good notes as I can, but I'm always missing stuff. And Ray's always like, oh, did you remember this? Did you remember that? And about 30% of the time I remembered what he brought up. But with the tool, you'll be able to like, oh, Jeff, remember this. Jeff, remember that. And he can just throw tasks at me. So we'll be able to keep track of all the stuff that comes up that is something to be concerned about. And then we can instead of forgetting it, which I do, we'll be able to make a decision on, okay, this is important, but we don't need to worry about it today. This is really important and we need to, put our boots on and get moving. And we can make decisions instead of like taking notes and forgetting things. So that'll allow us to, add value with, the reams of data that we collect of, the stacks and stacks of paper that are.
You mean this?
Yeah. that our bird dog here comes up with. And it'll allow us, we've got a lot of things going on, with the build out, that's gonna become more complex. And it'll allow us to be more organized. In our work, everything's on a list and everything's got a person responsible, and it's not a group, it's a person. And it should be better.
It's just informational for us. It's not, there's no way that this is gonna be a violation that we're in a
No,
meeting
we're
or
gonna do
anything.
this slowly with training wheels.
Yep.
So if you think about it, right, the town of Londonderry, we have files folders, And we have shared file folders that multiple people access for files, that
Yeah.
when we access things. And because we are trained, we know what we need to do for records retention and everything. And so there's going to be guardrails set up so that you can't use this. It's basically document storage that is actually going to help us be more responsive to 91A if
Okay.
people want to see what you're working on. It's actually going to aid us in that transparency. And it is not, and it's going to help you monitor your work in a way that is compliant with 91A.
Okay, good.
And that's why I said, like I said, we're going tricycle speed on this. I know Jeff sometimes wants to throw things at me because we're not moving quite fast enough. But we're working this through in a very methodical way, in a way that we're not we're not going to violate any 91A. It's actually, like I said, it's going to aid in public transparency because if somebody wants to see what documents have you seen, you just send them a link.
Very good.
That's it. You literally just send them a link.
Yeah,
Say,
excellent.
say information in regards to the number of contaminated wells, residential wells in the town of Londonderry, and where they're located, and current time, not 2020, but today. Because some of those things have changed over a period of time.
So for data like that, we actually rely on our partners at the state level, and at we rely on our partners to kind of coordinate that. We don't have a monitoring agency here in town, right?
So you don't have that information? The town
We
does
use
not
the New
have
Hampshire DES information, and it's currently linked to on the website as it is. So we link to the most updated map on the website in the water section right now. So we do have those external links for the public available on our website now. What we're talking about for this is so you can manage your workflow.
So it would be available to us.
I mean,
Anybody.
we're definitely not hiding any of that information. Like I said, the link to the map, the most updated map at the state level is on our website right now.
Yep. The
And
biggest-
whatever, as they update it, as the database is updated, it's updated here. It's not a static map. It's not a graphic. It's an updated database. We link to it.
Yeah, the biggest challenge I face with something like that is if you take a document that the state owns, you put it on a Londonderry server, it's out of date tomorrow.
Yep.
You don't know.
So that's why we link
That's
to
why
the
you just want
database
to link to the
instead.
state. You want to link to wherever that source document resides.
Okay.
So, and I think we've beat that horse to death.
Yeah.
I'm going to be quiet now.
Anything else? Okay, moving on. Martha, any news on the master plan?
No, I have nothing. We have a master plan, meeting coming up on the 15th.
Yep.
I know at the last master plan, we did go over, chapters on housing. And, we gave our feedback to, Jeff. And this meeting will be a continuation of that.
So the process continues.
Process continues.
I think it's a lot bigger than
It's a lot bigger.
originally envisioned,
Yes,
so.
I think so.
Is the working draft, I guess in this case of the housing chapter, is it on the website?
Is it on the website yet?
I mean, how, is it available to the public?
It's just in draft form now. There may be a draft there, I'm not sure. Do you know?
I don't know if they've put it on the website or not, the master plan website. I'd have to see what documentation they have there. But they do have a webpage for the master plan steering
Yeah,
committee.
right.
Yeah, they do have that.
Just
I got the
wondering what-
impression they took final comments from us, we had to send those in.
Yep.
And they were gonna, finish that off, and they wanted to present to town council at some point.
Yeah.
Those three sections.
Yeah, I just don't know at what point in time we'll post that document on that, on
I
the
wouldn't think they'd
webpage.
put it up there
Yeah,
before they
I
present
mean,
to
it's
town
not
council.
it's not really a finished document at this point. It's still a draft.
Because town council could change things, and they certainly could
Absolutely,
come
yeah.
on top of it.
Will change things.
Well, I mean, obviously, there's gonna be changes once it's released to the public.
I would,
There'll be all kinds of
Yep.
input.
Yep.
So, I mean, if they're waiting for the town council to see a draft, you know, that doesn't mean much.
well,
So, move on, I'll take an action to, see what we can do to get that posted.
yeah, absolutely.
Just move on. Yep. And I'll have a few more master plan discussions as we get into the subcommittee discussions as well. So, moving into the subcommittee discussions, there's been a few things happening on the energy side that I'll run through. It was so late it didn't make it to the agenda, but, Paul, you want to brief us on the Eversource rate hike that's been in the news the last couple of days?
Sure. If you're interested in the link to the Public Utilities Commission website with all the information, I'm happy to share that with you. There's well over 1,000 pages of documents, testimony, comments, and everything you need in a typical rate case. The last rate case they had was in 2019. They have now trying to update their cost structure through the end of 2023. And just to give you a sense of what they do to some degree, statewide, they have 124 substations. They have over 12,000 overhead lines that they have to maintain and keep up and so forth and so on. Underground lines, over 2,000 miles of underground lines to go with that as well. And you know, these little transformers you see on the poles, they have to maintain over 170,000 of those throughout the state.
So is this all to justify their rate hike? Is that
No, I'm
right?
just saying that's the infrastructure they need to
They've got?
maintain, right?
Yep.
If you want to, the rate hike is to some degree broken down into 4 areas. When I look through the testimony and a lot of their costs, their normal costs, like the daily payroll and all of that, actually in recent 2024 is very comparable to about 4 years ago. So those kinds of costs have kept fairly constant, which I was frankly surprised.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
surprising.
But one of the big areas that they have spent a lot of money on is just restoring power during power outages. The tolerance for customers being out of power isn't what it was just 10 years ago or 15 years ago. With technology and everything else, it is what it is. So, for example, in their testimony for the year 2023, 1 year, they spent $179 million to restore power in this state, just to kind of give you a sense of what it costs to do
So those
that.
out-of-state trucks, they put up in hotels, they're on standby 24/7,
Exactly.
that's the killer.
Those are the killers. Yeah.
That's why I'm so in favor of underground work, water, sewage, electricity.
Except it's called the Grant State for a reason, so 12,000 miles of underground would be fairly expensive to,
Yep.
you know, and if it goes wrong in underground, then the other problem. So the total rate increase is $185 million. There's a very formal process by which the New Hampshire Public Utilities goes through. It's not an automatic, you know, they get it or anything like that. They have to justify all the numbers, and the numbers are audited and verified and so forth and so on. I can tell you that the consumer advocate, Don Crease, and his staff are engaged 200% into this process. I know a lot of the players on that staff. They are very well qualified to look at this data and to analyze it and to see if it's reasonable or not. But the big areas where power outages was a big area. The other is the capital infrastructure they've been making into its infrastructure, all the things I just mentioned, to update them, to, you know, fix them, so forth and so on. In the past year, they put over $200 million into their system. So that's a cost that you have to pay somewhere, somehow, along the way. So they're making those arguments before the Public Utilities Commission. And then there's some information technology upgrades. There's some vegetation, they call it vegetation management. I call it tree trimming.
Cutting trees.
Yeah, that type of thing. That historically has gotten more and more complex, because if you want to trim a line down a road and that road is designated as a scenic road,
Right.
there's a whole other process you gotta follow through before you can trim any trees along those
Can't use
lines.
Agent Orange anymore, huh?
Correct. So,
I know you'd like.
so there's a lot of data. The good news is, with all the information and all the infrastructure that they put in place for the last 10 years, customers are not getting as many power outages. And if you're getting power outages, they're much shorter in time, which doesn't affect businesses and so forth and so on. So all of that is in there. I haven't gone through the 1,000 pages, to be honest with you, okay? But others involved in the process will go through that in great detail. And what I look for is, are the numbers audited, are the numbers reported in their, federal 10Ks and all of that type of stuff to make sure they're not, quote, making up numbers. And I didn't see any of that in any of the filing, to be honest with you. So, this will affect what is called the distribution part of your bill. Unlike transmission or your power supply piece. So, the concerns will be is the elderly will have, it will affect them because that's the piece that they pay for all the time. And, I haven't gotten down to the point where, is the pricing for this increase gonna be based on usage? Or is it gonna be based on the fact that you're just a customer, or both? And how you split that up, okay? So when they invest in the infrastructure to the tune of $200 million and so forth and so on, where do you get that money? Well, they have to borrow it. And the other ways, they have stockholder investors and that type of thing. So you have to pay off the interest on the loans, you have to pay a reasonable return to the stockholders. That's where you get the capital to invest in New Hampshire, completely, so. Personally, don't think it's unreasonable, but it needs to be looked at, and that's what the process started today.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Stranded cost. They're talking about a large increase and talking about making it permanent. They're having a public input today, tomorrow, probably all week. And I think we really need to have some representation from the general public and from the town of Londonderry. I plan on going myself. Who am I? I don't know much. But I have talked to Don Crisp. He sent me an email, okay? And I think it's really important that we, on the utility committee, have some representation to show that we are concerned about some of this. And I understand what you said about the justification, that they have a lot to maintain, which they do. But I believe they also get federal money. And they also take on certain burdens, like taking on all the wooden poles in the state of New Hampshire, because it become a real problem with all the cable that are run on what we used to refer to as telephone poles. And so, to get away from that, purchase all the wooden poles. Now, that's what I understand. I could be wrong. Is that not the case?
I'd have to go back to those specific cases. I can tell you, when I was working there, it was a problem.
Yes.
The poles at one time were, the telephone company would have somebody own the poles and they would maintain them, the
Right.
cable companies and then Public Service of New Hampshire. It was not unusual to have cable company and telephone poles not maintained the way they should,
Right.
okay? That causes outages, that causes a lot of problems and so forth. So many times there'll be poles that'll be replaced because they're too old. And you ever see these two poles next to each other and half it's cut off well,
Yes.
the other half is responsibility of the cable companies and the telephone companies, and they just were not getting to those poles to move their lines onto the new pole and that type
Right.
of thing. So, there were actions taken by the Public Utilities Commission and other public forums that, said, okay, we'll get somebody, we know somebody who does it and does it well. Eversource. So we're gonna look to them to do it. There's always a cost to
Because of
that.
the burden on those old poles with all those cables, which are pretty much a mess, when you look at it, puts extreme burden on it, and the electric is above that and has to be maintained, because that's really important.
Right.
Over the course of the last probably 5 years, maybe a little more, there's been an enormous amount of work done in the lines in Londonderry, converting steel, wood to steel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we know as living proof here that, you know, they're spending the money. In fact, sometimes I wonder if they're, you know, they're incentivized to spend money on transmission because they can't make money, you know, burning coal and stuff.
Well, yeah,
But-
absolutely.
But, you know, be that as it may, they're definitely upgrading the poles in our neck of the woods.
I think
So-
you find that they've got a lot of federal money for that. Is that not the case?
I'd have to go into the documents and find out what they got or have received or not received. At the street level that we see here, a lot of that is handled by the state and the Public Utilities Commission, so. When I was working there was not a lot of federal money to do that type of work, but that was a few years ago. I don't know what's happening today.
So to Ray's point, I would say, I don't know, Paul, if you have anything else to add, but to Ray's point, if anybody's interested in going up to Concord to be, to listen in on the proceedings.
Yeah,
Ray,
and you
have the
you can,
information, right?
you can write something and submit it too, you know, or you don't even have to go, you know. But I just think it's so important, you know, that the cost of everything is going up, let's face it. And the utility company, Eversource, is providing a vital service, and we certainly appreciate that, right? And they're also a company that is entitled to make a profit, and we understand that too. But sometimes we need to know the justification. And
What is the percentage of the rate hike this time?
It's around 6, I think, isn't it?
Hang on.
Between 6 and 7.
Well,
6.75.
Oh, 6.75.
yeah, but they had asked for a temporary rate increase initially of 4.8% last June. And then on top of that would be a 6.8%, which is what they're asking for now. But they typically take all of that together and try to work something out.
So
But the
what was it,
but the
June?
fixed-
I'm sorry.
Last
the
June.
fixed
Yeah,
monthly
last.
cost, the fixed monthly charge, customer charge, they're proposing to increase by 43%. And that means it doesn't make a difference how much electricity you use. That's irrelevant. That's a different cost. But this cost, they're looking to increase by 43%.
Paul, do you have any idea when they're gonna propose rate hikes for the supply side of the bill? Is that gonna be in August? Or that's when it gets approved, it gets,
I think you may begin to see some testimony filed probably come June, maybe May or June timeframe, because you gotta go through a process of review so that it's effective August 1st.
Yep. 'cause I think that's a
Yes.
component that's missing in the conversation as well. We're gonna see the supply side go up.
Yeah,
Or there's
that's-
gonna be,
That's
rate
going to be
changes.
from 13.81 to 19.81
for what?
for
Kilowatt
supply.
hour?
Supply.
I don't think we know what supply is yet, do we?
Where are you getting that from, Ray?
Where am I getting that from?
Yeah.
This is actually from WMUR TV.
I don't
Okay.
think there's been any discussion on supply, only on the,
Well,
source,
th-
or
this is-
the infrastructure.
This is
Supply
from
is
them,
not-
and
supply
where
is
where
not
did they
involved
get,
in
where
this
did they
rate
get it
case.
from?
Yeah, supply is not
You
involved in
sure
this
it's
rate
not the
case.
fixed price?
No, the fish price is, they're looking to increase by 43%.
Yeah, but that's about what 13 to 19 gets you.
Yeah, that's the fixed price. So I
Okay.
think to Ray's point, earlier point, you know, if anybody's interested in looking in on the proceedings up at the PUC, it's available online. Certainly, if anybody wants to drive up to Concord, you know, it's a meeting that's open to the public.
Right.
So, thank you for that, Paul. Moving on down to the next item, the Energy Master Plan. I did put a draft of our energy master plan into the master plan steering committee. I did get a little bit of feedback from them. I think we're in the right direction. I did get so just talking in general about the utilities committee plans, I have a plan from the water subcommittee, I have a plan from the sewer and solid waste subcommittee. And over the next couple of days, I'm going to try to put those together. The format's very similar. I think the content is very similar, what we're trying to propose and accomplish, and I think it was really coming together nicely. So I'll be working on that over the next few days. I'll get that out to everybody for review and additional comment. I think we're ahead of the curve in terms of
Yeah.
the rest of the master plan.
Yes, we
But
are.
I'd like to be the first one in with what we have and be the poster children for that, so.
Did you say you were gonna take it over or just we're gonna run it?
Yeah. I said John Ferraro once. I didn't say we. Next item on the agenda is if there's no questions on the master plan from the various subcommittees. Energy audit. Paul, I'm going to tap your shoulder again. The energy
Sure.
audit update.
The consulting firm, engineering consulting firm of GDS Associates out of Bedford, was on site here in Londonderry on April 9th. They walked through 6 of the town buildings. We had received some correspondence a couple days later. It'll take, they were very impressed actually with the energy improvements that have been made to date. That was part of their communication, particularly in the building energy management systems. Having said that, they also saw some opportunities. The typical process is they take these opportunities, they do the engineering calculations of if we do this or change that or whatever, you'll save so much energy, and can they match it to the existing programs in the state to get rebates? And so then they'll come back with a report to the town saying, here are the projects, and oh, by the way, this is the rebate, this is the cost of the town, but this is the savings, and here's the payback period. In general, that's what you're gonna get. I can circulate an example of that, not from GDS, but from another engineering firm that works with the Public Utilities Commission and Eversource. And it gives you an idea. This is an example of changing lighting, old lighting to more LED efficient lighting, and so that the customer can make decisions on what projects they wish to pursue. Many of them just pursue the highest payback period, quickest payback first. We would expect to see that report. I think Dave, the director, would get that probably towards the end of May is my guess.
Yeah, that would be my guess. Dave is out on some, he's out on vacation in the next couple of weeks, so I would anticipate probably having an update on either the report itself or when we can expect it in June.
Cool. At that rate, I can get one electric car for what you save.
I had another project recently where it was putting in some variable frequency drives on some HVAC systems, and the payback was actually 7 months. Wow. It was very, very fast, and so these are older systems, and so if you have those kinds of opportunities, you grab them, and it's well worthwhile, so that's the quick update, and the good news is to get the audit done, because there are still funds available for the rebates and all of that. Those do dry up eventually, so you don't want to wait till the later part of the year to do these kinds of things, so.
Excellent. Any questions on the audit? Moving on to the EECBG grant. Any news, Mike, on that?
Well, speaking of funds drying up, I don't even know if the people that I've been talking to are any longer in the federal employ. It's chaos, and so I don't anticipate hearing anything. I don't see any value in trying to push our way into anything right now. I think we just have to basically let the courts decide who gets to, keep working and who gets fired. And then hope that there is somebody there in that office that will communicate with us and tell us what's going on. But I don't see any change in our situation for at least a couple of months.
Okay. Disappointing, but not unexpected.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay,
I should ask though, did we ever hear from the National Renewable Energy Lab on their offer for assistance?
Nothing.
Yeah, I don't know if
I
they're
don't
working
think the
anymore.
lab exists anymore. I'm not sure that.
Yeah, I know, they were on the Cutting blog.
thank you. Next item, the solar zoning ordinance. I think we're inching closer to the finish line on that, or at least on having a draft ready to go to the planning board. Got some good input from Mike on that, and I did send it out to Revision Energy. It's a company that we are working with up by the airport out of Project. Got some really good feedback from them.
Yeah, they're good.
And so I think we have a good document, just needs a little bit of fine tuning and some wordsmithing, and I think we'll be ready to take it to the planning board. I will send it around for one more look-see before we do go in front of the town council. Just, I'd like everybody's opinion, so. Get
So-
some good feedback on that.
On the solar by the airport,
Yep,
the airport director moved on.
yep.
And they're in the active process of selecting a new director. The mayor of Manchester is the lead on that.
Really?
Yeah,
Ruiz?
Yeah, Jay Ruiz.
yeah. He's not using the commission, so I don't have any inside baseball feedback on who they're selecting for the
Yep.
guy. But the interim is a sharp guy. He was the lieutenant for the last guy.
Yep.
Just sharp, top shelf guy. So we should have something. The next meeting is, I believe, middle of this month. So I should have something for the next meeting.
Okay, excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. Any questions for the Energy Subcommittee? Moving on to water. Jeff?
So I sent out today or yesterday, I think it was this morning, a rough draft of the water portion of the master plan, intentionally written sort of at the 50,000-foot level to match the direction of the energy piece. Have it broken out into 3 broad policies for water. One is contamination management. 2 is build out of access, which we discussed a lot here. And 3rd is we're calling it future proofing of water access. And that's the, are we going to have access to water 20 years from now? Are we going to bring water over from across the river? That's just being aware of that. And those are, sort of conveniently, those sort of follow the same level of urgency. We need to make sure that everything is clean and pure water. That's obviously top of mind. We have that broken down into 4 sort of broad categories. There's the PFAS area in the consent decree, intentionally, well, I'll just say it that way. And then there's 3 Superfund sites on the list. There's one of them that was shut down or closed or deleted in 2014, but in the EPA language, they say it's still, possible to be opened if something changes. I'm not sure exact verbiage, but
Which one is that?
I don't know. It's on the file, but there's language on the EPA page for that 3rd one that's
It's being monitored.
it's like deleted or closed or finished, but it could open up if something happens.
Maybe
So I
Auburn
included
Road?
that in there.
Yeah, Auburn Road.
No,
Might be the DPW.
I think it is, Ray.
Yeah.
I think it's which?
The
DPW.
DPW site.
DPW.
Oh, DPW.
So, those are the 4 key contamination areas for water that I was aware of. If there's something we're missing, Ann or Ray, I'm assuming you guys would know that off the top of your head. You have the email for the thing. Please provide any input.
Jeff,
Yes, sir.
there's a DES website called the One Stop website. Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
Mike probably has access to it. You have to get permission to use some of those data layers. But it has there's many data layers within it. But the developer uses it and he wants to just see what he's up against. One of the layers is a set of the RCRA sites. The
Ricker?
RCRA, the
Resource Conservation Recovery Act.
and
Got it.
contaminated sites.
Is that like a junior varsity super fund, kinda?
No, it's the varsity.
Oh, is it more? is it more serious than Superfund, or
It's
is
the
it?
same
It's
thing.
the same thing.
Okay, okay, perfect, okay, thank you.
It's,
So,
except for-
but that'll give you, that'll give you a complete list. It also has status, so if it's closed, then you don't have to worry about it. But when I went through your plan there, and I saw the 3 sites, I thought, well, maybe we should be looking, throughout town, see
Yeah.
what there is.
I'll check the other database. Those 3 sites I pulled off the EPA. I just did a search on the, EPA Superfund Londonderry. So if that's not I wouldn't call that a thorough search, but I'll check this other website as well.
Yep.
We've
So
had
orig-
emergency removals too.
I did not look for that. I just looked at Superfunds.
There were
That's-
originally 4.
Yeah, he's right.
The most of any town
In
or
New
city in the state of New Hampshire.
Probably in any state.
Huh?
I said probably in any state of the country. 4
Well-
sites in one town is quite extraordinary.
Well,
Yeah.
4 plus 2 is probably, we had 6 at one time, right? The one in Hudson, well, the one in Hudson doesn't count.
No,
No, no,
different
no,
town.
this is
Right, you're right.
just in Londonderry.
Yeah, so it goes without saying, keeping an eye on the contamination areas is top of mind on water.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
everybody should be copied. Kirsten, you should have a copy as well of the first draft. It's 2 pages typed, so you could read it in 10 minutes at the most. I'm always open to constructive feedback on my writing, so. So that's the water master plan. I don't think I saw any feedback or any additional ideas on the, wait, the PSA planning update?
Public-
So the
yeah,
videos.
TV shows. The
Oh,
public
yeah,
service
okay, so,
announcements.
yeah, I didn't see any additional feedback on that, so, I still think it's a really good idea, so what I think I'm gonna do is, the people that have provided feedback, I'm gonna work with you guys on what you have, with the hopes, the fervent hopes that, once we have some successes and some wins, and everybody sees how, fun and, not fun and interesting, but how effective and productive and informative it can be, that we'll get more buy-in from people on the utility committee and hopefully other people in town. I mean, it's a cool, fun venue, and if done correctly, you're talking about something that you have passion about. So,
What is
So
this, I'm sorry, what is this venue? Since I missed the last meeting.
this is the, working on videos of something related to infrastructure or water or energy,
Oh, okay.
like we did with Mike Malaguti,
Like the
Back-
PFAS one.
Right.
like the PFAS one,
We're
or,
volunteering to do it for everybody.
yeah.
Could
So-
Go ahead.
we use what Mindy did? Do we have a?
If we have a
tape?
copy of that, or a video of that,
I
or,
gave you, I sent you a copy of her presentation, but I don't know if the video, if it was ever
We-
videoed. I don't think.
I'll
it
reach out
was.
to you after the meeting and we'll see what I will double check to see what we have.
Well, we have her presentation. I emailed you her presentation, everybody, but
I'll
I
track it
don't know
down.
in terms of a video, because I don't think it was videotaped. Her
Well-
presentation was videotaped.
Yeah, I think her presentation was great. I'll have to re-find the PowerPoint or the PDF. It's not the right, if we don't have a video, I'm thinking about the video. If we don't have a video, it's probably not gonna be in the thing, but we can find a way to make use of that and have that be part of our community outreach.
Yeah.
So it doesn't all have to be movies,
We can ask her, right?
Yeah.
to
You know,
do it.
the,
I mean, she said she would do it again, and she probably has her own video.
absolutely.
Of when she's given presentations to other people. So maybe I can just get a video from her.
Yeah.
I did a little research. The EPA does have videos
Oh, no,
for
I'm talking-
presentation.
Yeah, no, I'm talking, I've been in that room, I can tell you. But I'm talking about Mindy Mesner when she came and gave
Oh,
us
yeah.
a presentation.
Yes, yes.
Yep. But I mean, even if it's not a video presentation in the studio, the idea was brought up to, we can, we have, Deb Paul has a newspaper, we can put things in newspapers, we have other venues than just videos.
Yes, we do.
Right, right. And she did do that already. She already did like a 4-part series.
Yep.
On PFAS.
Yep. So, I'm gonna just move forward with the people that wanna move forward with me, with us.
Yep.
So you guys will be hearing from us. I think I've got 3 or 4 people that.
When
have
is your
feedback.
next meeting? When is the
On-
water meeting? In May?
2 Saturdays from today.
Yep.
So what day is that? Is that the 24th?
I'd have to look at my calendar.
17th.
17th. 17th at 10 o'clock in the Sunnycrest room.
Okay, because this is the 10th. This weekend coming up is the 10th, so
Yeah.
2 Saturdays, wouldn't that be the 24th?
No, so it's not the
You're
first
talking-
Saturday after the meeting, it's the second
Second
Saturday.
Second Saturday after the.
Not this
utility
Saturday,
meeting.
next Saturday.
Okay. Okay.
So you guys will hear from me. I'll put together a plan and we'll look for a way to get that out. I think that's it for the water. And then
Excellent.
obviously what happened today.
Excellent presentation today.
Yeah.
Thanks to you and to John for pulling that together.
Yeah.
Yep.
We took your input. We did work them pretty hard.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I thought it was great, and I
Yeah.
thought,
Very good.
I
I
thought it
have
was well
some-
accepted on both sides.
Yeah, I have some work to do with Kirsten on the cross-referencing that database. And I'll send you an email today. I know you're super busy, but, I mean, we'll get it when we get it.
As soon as you asked about roads, she looked right at me. I forgot.
But it's, I want to move, I have a bias towards action, so I want to move this forward very, very quickly, but I do realize that it's going to be a 5 or 10 year process, obviously, to get all the money and all the funding and all the construction. Maybe not 10 years, but, so as long as we keep a steady pace.
I think we need to start looking at how do we prioritize, how do we bond, and because they go hand in hand.
Yep. Well,
And who makes those determinations?
yep, that's my next point is Congressman Mr. Dunn
It's
here.
not, sorry.
Governor
You
Dunn.
should correct that, representative,
Sorry, Representative Dunn here.
not congressman. It's
Mr.
usually-
Dunn, Mr.
right,
Dunn,
Congressman, usually federal level.
Mr.
Yeah.
Dunn, has asked
Has
us,
got, but he could be there in 10 years, there you go.
Mr. Dunn has asked us to provide some information to town council and present to town council. I'm gonna be talking to Ron
Yep.
in the next day or 2 or 3 to figure out exactly what that means, and then we'll put together some packages. We can do the engineering and technical piece to lay out the what and the how, but the which to go first, the sequence of which area to build out first, that's a policy decision.
Yep.
And we've intentionally avoided the policy discussion because it's not our venue.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
That's right.
so we are at the point now where we're getting really good feedback from Pennachuck, and it's time to sort of collect it and present it to town council and say, hey, this is where we are. We need to start thinking about sequence and budget and priorities and policy and funding.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so hopefully, knock on wood, we'll keep moving the ball down the field
Yep.
in an aggressive manner.
Yep.
So-
I think it's a great plan, and kind of tying in with the capital improvement program process that we have here in town as well. That's really getting kicked off now, and I'm hoping we can identify maybe even a planning project or something like that that we can add into the CIP
Yeah.
and start prioritizing that as well. That's a
Sure.
yearly document, just kind of like forecasting major capital improvement projects.
Sure.
So I think we need to start doing that as
Yeah,
well, so.
we've got the first step was this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, we can cross-reference it with some engineering studies that Kirsten has on the website.
Yep.
And now it's, we can start moving forward more quickly now.
Excellent. Good.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
At roundtable.
Okay.
Do it?
Was that round table? Yes.
Oh, okay. Sewer, solid waste, John?
Yeah. Sewer and, got a frog in my throat. We met a couple of weeks ago, and actually had two folks present at our meeting, which were kind of interesting. First, the gentleman who's a part owner of Renewal Compost. They're a composting service based out of Manchester, New Hampshire, but servicing a pretty broad area for a small business. In Londonderry, currently they only have 10 customers for their service. And basically they offer, because their density is not here, their business is confined to a drop-off service. So there's a location at Sunnycrest Farms where their customers can bring their compostable material and dump it into a container there, and he collects that. If we can grow that base and give him a little more density in town, I believe his target was 30 plus. There'd be a reduction in fees for Londonderry customers. Plus, he could start to order what he offers in Bedford. He has 150 customers in Bedford, and he offers them curbside pickup on compost. So there's an interesting thing there. You know, it's one of the choices that we can offer customers where we don't have citizens where we don't have a mandatory composting program available as Vermont does
What's the
currently.
name of the company?
Renewal Compost. If you get over to Sunnycrest, you'll find their container. It's basically a Rubbermaid container with a
Bear.
lid towards the back of the building.
So, and this is a question, would this be appropriate to mention on the utility Facebook page? Or is that sort of endorsing a business? Is that,
I think that's a fine line.
Yeah.
And if there's like 3 companies, if we had all 3 of them listed,
got it.
that would be fine. If there's 3 and we list 1, that's where we
Yep.
get into
If
difficulty.
I could suggest, guys, what I would probably do is, I think the other option is, for people that are interested in composting, is the do-it-yourself option. We haven't done anything in our committee with that as of yet. But then if we put that up there and said, hey, if you want to compost, here's 2 options. Here's a service, here's some do-it-yourself information. We might be able to put that up there and not look like we're promoting a company.
Yep, and anything we do like that, we'll run it through staff just to make sure that we're
Right.
not getting ourselves into trouble.
It's kind of an interesting business because he is definitely a smaller business, very well-spoken young man, but if this ever if there was ever a mandate in the state of New Hampshire, you'd have the big guys coming in on top of him
Yes.
right away. So he's sort of, he's got his spade in the ground, literally, I guess, and doing this for everybody. And but the long-term prospect, I think, is, with the unavailability of spots for more landfills, and food waste takes up 20 to 25% of what goes there. The long-term prospect for his business, I think, is questionable. It'll be interesting to see how he.
Unless
kinda
we sign a
routes it.
long-term contract with them now, right?
John, would you like to volunteer to put together a 1-hour presentation on composting and how it's done and?
When we have more information.
Got it, okay.
John, do you have any idea where his processing, call it a plant for lack of a better word, is?
It's actually J&F Farms right over in Darrell.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it is?
Okay,
Yeah.
We use them.
That's where he goes. He's got a great
They lays it
relationship
out
with
on
them.
long rows.
That's,
Um,
I grew
so,
up with a farm, so.
And they can
we
take
had
all
no
kinds of
waste.
stuff, they can take stuff. that
So
you
it is a very local business, and I guess the other thing I liked about him, and by the way, Joy is a customer, so we
Oh.
can look to her for the real in-depth questions. But he takes everything.
Yeah.
Okay, which is a lot of composting folks are limited. They won't take, Joy, correct me when I'm wrong, meat and bones and dairy, and they make you exclude things, which we live in the land where we want to put everything in one bucket if we're going to do this at all. And he does offer that as an option, which I thought was attractive, so. But I think I've asked the committee to come back to the next meeting with, hey, let's come back, everybody, with 1 or 2 ideas of what we can do with this business. For example, Sunnycrest Farms is a great local company, but they are skewed to one side of town, and you get into this whole conversation, which, by the way, I've had with my beloved bride, about the disadvantage of having to drive halfway across town to get rid of a bucket of food waste, okay?
Yeah.
And so maybe we could look around and find a second drop-off site, or maybe even a couple, and I think he'd be willing to work with us on something like that. Okay, so,
At some point, the town could do a request for information on food composting. That would be perfectly legitimate, I think, because you're not favoring anybody, you're just asking for information. And then if the information comes back that there are 3 possibilities, you know, we can put them all out there. If it comes back that there's only one,
We put it out there.
yeah, you put it out there, because we've asked, and here's what we got, right? I mean, we're not ready to do that yet, but just to keep that in mind.
You know what, it's been difficult to finding another company that offers compost service in town.
Right.
That's why I was thinking more in terms of offering it as a menu. Do it yourself, use the service.
I'm just looking for a way to shelter us.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Okay.
Yep.
The other gentleman that came to our meeting was somebody we're very familiar with, Bob Kerry, who's our town's engineer. And Bob talked about a couple of things. You know, one of the things that we had on our master plan was maybe kickstarting a program we used to have of sending mailers, informational packets to new residents. And we have an issue with that, and it was very interesting listening to him talk, in that we had no way of measuring the impact of what that was doing. He talked about some new residents still came to the DPW to ask for, you know, how do I recycle and what do I do with my septic tank, and, you know, the kinds of materials that we were putting in those packets. But he doesn't know how we're really impacting them. So we have to think that through a little bit. He hasn't closed the door on it, but I think he wants to set up some sort of a metric, and we'll have to come up with something, maybe a coupon or something where we get some feedback from folks that are new to town, particularly with all the folks moving to town, that says, hey, I got your packet and it influenced my behavior with my solid waste, okay? So that's on the plate. But the other thing that Bob talked about was some new legislation in the state regarding lithium-ion batteries. This had come down, Lynn, through you, through Deb Paul to us. And that was kind of interesting because the state has now banned putting lithium-ion batteries into your trash. Primarily because, just as you've probably read about cell phones on airplanes occasionally causing a problem, these things have caused fires in our landfills, and a fire in a landfill is a big deal, okay, a really big deal. Bob explained lithium-ion batteries. You know, we think of cell phones, but he mentioned electric toothbrushes. Yeah. Okay, you don't think of that. Toys. How many toys now have lithium-ion batteries in them? Now, the good news out of this whole thing is that there are ways of getting rid of these things safely. You can take them. Staples has a program. You can take it there. Home Depot has a program. You can take it there. And the town of Londonderry at our drop-off center has had a program to receive those batteries. They have a shed where you can bring them in, and Bob goes down there every Monday and sorts through the batteries. I'm sure that's a pleasant thing to do.
Yeah.
Side note, if you do, wrap it in a plastic bag, or a paper bag's even better. Lithium, some of you know we race. We had to have to do a special training course on lithium batteries for recovery of vehicles, what you can and can't do. They're little bombs, okay? My race car lithium battery is only this big, weighs 3 pounds, puts out 500, close to 600 cranking amps. You dead short that thing, it's a mess. They do have, like you said, recycling. It's the best thing because they can actually recover a lot of those chemicals, components. So, yeah, that's all good, all good.
I hope that shed doesn't go up in fire.
And they get everything there, you know, standard AA, AAA batteries can go right in your trash, okay? But a lot of people are concerned and brought them in. But frankly, I don't think a lot of people have thought about the fact that that electric toothbrush you're using has that battery in it. And one of the things I said to Bob is I recently took apart some devices in our house that had old batteries because I wanted to do the same thing. And I was there with a hammer pounding away at the thing, which is because they are kind of built into the, you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
That's the worst thing that you
Yeah.
can do. So,
Right.
Yeah, but, by the way, I thought regular batteries were not supposed to go in the trash.
regular batteries can go in it.
Yeah, Duracell.
I don't put mine.
Alkaline
Yeah, but
batteries.
alkaline has a trace of mercury in it.
Not since '96.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
They stopped,
Okay.
stopped that.
I sound really educated because I read the law, but that's pre-96 battery. If you've got an old kid's toy laying around that's got ancient batteries in it, it may have those mercury-based batteries.
I still
so-
recycle it all.
I do too, I'm bring, yeah.
There is a place to recycle alkaline now.
What do you do?
Somebody takes it.
Oh, Home Depot.
Is it Home Depot?
Home Depot and Staples.
Staples.
Staples. Staples.
Any kind of battery,
Yeah.
any?
They'll take those too? I don't know. I see you have Beautify Londonderry on the agenda. I'm gonna throw it to you, Joy, so you can throw a plug out and get these guys out cleaning the streets with us.
Sure, join us this Saturday. We're hoping that the weather holds out. Yeah, this Saturday, we'll be at Matthew Thornton, handing out supplies, 9 to noon. You can come on by, grab your supplies, your bags, get some nice vests to borrow, so you can advertise Beautify Londonderry and show some visibility on the streets. And if you have a place in mind you want to go to, you can go there, or we can tell you some places that are in real need of cleanup. So we would love to have you guys if you want to come. Or if you can't come on Saturday, it is fun. I think it is fun when you do with a group of people and get out there. And we've been blessed with wonderful weather the last couple of years. Right now, it is saying that it's not going to rain and it's going to be 63. So we might be blessed again this year. Who knows? If you can't do it on Saturday, however, there are a few options. One, the library has a DIY checkout bag. And two, I just heard, I didn't get to see the presentation last night, but was there some good news from town council last night?
We presented to the town council last night, is in the hands of the town manager.
I see,
And,
okay.
and the chairman of the town council, will, let us know.
Okay.
Whoever, I've heard him given several titles tonight, congressman, representative.
Yeah.
I know chairman is correct, so.
That's correct.
So that's pending, but, and of course, if you come and turn out, we have ice creams donated by Max Apples for the first 100 people that turn out, so. The last thing I see on the agenda is Household Hazardous Waste Day. That was this past Saturday. That took place over in Derry. I don't have any data on that at all. But at the same time, we opened up the waste oil recovery shed behind the fire station for the very last time.
Oh,
no. The town has made the decision that it's become a little too risky to have citizens basically bring their oil there, lift it up over their head, dump it into the tanks there, the recovery tanks. The shed is a little old, the citizens are getting older, and so frankly are the volunteers. Okay, so I had the privilege of being there for that, for the last collection at that site. They've replaced that now with several businesses in town, Advanced Auto, O'Leary Auto, that are frankly offer more opportunities. That shed was open one day a month. Now they have an opportunity to get rid of your waste oil and other related materials 7 days a week, the whole month. So it's probably a better, more convenient solution for most citizens. Be a little sad to see the shed go. Lynn Marty Saruja's son came by
Oh.
to say goodbye to the shed because
wow.
his dad worked there for years and years. So I think that's it from solid waste unless there's any questions.
And by the way, that oil that you take to the automotive place or whatever actually gets recycled.
Sure does.
So that's a good thing, too.
Instead of burned.
Instead of burning it.
Yeah, right.
If you have just a note to this, if you have anybody looking for it right now, it's on the front page of the website, and it's going to stay there for the rest of the month. The new locations you can take it to. After that, it will live on the Engineering and Environmental Services solid waste page. So this information will be on there permanently as long as these places are taking these fluids. So we'll update that to include that on there. But for right now, it's on the front page of the website under news.
Okay, good. Thank you. John, cable, internet?
Just a slight update, honing in on some of the problems people are having in the town we actually think it may be a model of some of the cable boxes. So I'm supposed to see them Friday. We're going to do, I've already done a swap out to do some tests, and it's like, oh my God, it works. So now we're gonna swap out a main box, and we know the slave boxes are working, and then we'll go from there. They did pay a visit. We did have a problem on our street again. Every time it rains, they come, but I try to ignore that one, but, so we'll find out. That's about it, yeah. Oh, can expect to see a lot more things. There's another rocket going up with about 30 more satellites. So you're gonna start to see a lot more offerings of all of these cable services. It's actually.
Good.
Of all the cables that we see on the poles, why are there so many cables?
Well,
Is that necessary?
there's actually only one cable. Then there's telephone, then there's your voltage lines, then there's all sorts of stuff. Very rarely do you have two cables for cable.
Franchise.
When you see that big square little box, that is the only cable that goes in and out. So, like, for example, DirecTV now offers a cable service through the Comcast lines. So, the way the laws are set up, you don't have to do it overbuilt. You know what that is. An overbuilt. The cable companies will charge a certain rate for other people to run their service, and it goes to your house. I am interested, I'm still waiting for an answer, how, what's the Fios company? I looked at 9 of them this week.
Fidium?
Fidium is claiming that they're completely fiber optic, when I know a lot of the trunk lines in the town are only fiber optic, and the rest of the lines are not. So I'm checking on that. That's a slow process. I had other things to do this week and session.
Okay. Moving on. Roundtable. Coming toward the end of the agenda. Joy?
Nothing, nope.
Paul?
Good.
Yeah.
In addition to this new book by the woman who's going to be speaking on this Thursday night, there was actually an article by her in the New York Times on April 27th, huge article. And it focuses on the sludge which has been taken from wastewater treatment plants and then placed, unfortunately, for a long time on farmland across the country. So a lot of the farmland across the country has, when this happened, people thought it was a good thing.
Concentrated fertilizer.
Yeah, that's exactly what everybody thought it was, great fertilizer. But a lot of that fertilizer has industrial contaminants in it, as well as the PFAS and PFOA. And Maine, so that means, right, that the materials, the foods that you're eating, right, could, right, also be contaminated depending on where they come from. Maine is the only state that I know of so far which has done testing on all of their farmland, 100 pieces of land, and they've discovered quite a bit of PFAS and PFOA up there on that farmland. So anyway, that's what this article tends to focus on. We can always ask her about it tomorrow night. The reason why I'm so interested in this is because I was elected as part of the Sierra Club's executive council. So there's a group of about 5 people in the executive council in this chapter of New Hampshire Sierra Club. And Sierra Club, we're all sponsoring this. So we're trying to get the word out, pushing this.
Good. Thank you. John?
Sure.
Real quick, so one of the things that Jeff and I were working on, which is actually presented tonight, we were trying to figure out, what are the hot areas, what are the most touched areas we need to take care of right away, and eventually we came up with a cost per foot, which was great. That cost per foot does not equal water demand. It just says how much it's gonna cost you to get the water there. So that's why previously I was asking you what our zoning is, what do we have for houses and stuff like that. And my senior editor here sends me an email after the meeting, she goes, by the way, you might wanna check into all the House and Senate bills for zoning. Okay, I am going to separate that into two. I have my public residential state of New Hampshire opinion, but I have my water committee opinion on how I'm gonna get my work done. And basically, I have spent close to 100 hours trying to catch up. I mean, today alone, I did 14 bills I had to review because they are changing so quickly. And in my email, I said, I don't think you saw it right, it would take 8 Rays just to attend all these meetings up there. So I'm gonna cut it real short. I was gonna say it's important for each one of us because the zoning changes, besides what I think is not the right thing for our town or any town, it's gonna impact on how we calculate what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And real quick question is, I asked this to Ron, I'll make a quick answer. It gets introduced, it passes the House, passes the Senate, signed into law. Is that the governor?
Yes.
Now, when they sign into law, does she do that all at one time, or it might be a couple a week or whatever?
So it depends on the bills. So if it's a priority bill, like earlier in the year, we had a Senate bill that came right to the House right away and went right to her and got signed immediately. So if it's something that's prioritized, it can go right through immediately. Typically, they wait to the end and she signs them all at once.
Okay.
That's typical. But if it's something that she considers a priority, she'll have a press conference and she'll sign it.
And
So-
part of me says some of these are good, some of them are so obtuse. I mean, Hewlett Packard spent a lot of money to send me to contract law school, and I'm sorry, it's gonna be a real burden for the town planning board and administrators. Because a lot of these things say, oh, and you, the town, must provide, or you, the town, must do all this. So I did ask Ron and the board, is there a cheat sheet? In other words, I can read all these things, I have to go all through the notes, I have to guess, but actually the answer is, and I won't wanna take your thunder away,
No,
but May 13th, you've set up a presentation.
I do.
So I'll let you talk about that. That's very important. And if anybody wants pointers to these, I did send one that lists most of them, if you want to start reading. I think that, I can't remember her name, I've talked to her, the lady you're presenting with, very informative.
Okay.
And I think that, that'll be a great meeting for people to go to.
Can I just ask about that? Is this, because there have been a ton of emails that have gone to everybody's phone about this issue. And it appears from what I've read, you've read a lot more than I have on each one of these bills. It appears that the objective from a lot of the bills is to have the state take over the local ordinances from each town.
That's right.
And I guess my question is like, why, this is just a general question, why would the state want to spend a lot of time?
Oh, boy.
I mean, it must take one heck of a lot of time to review a number of different town ordinances and either approve them or not approve them.
Oh, no, they're
You're
not
not
doing
gonna
it.
do
They're not
that.
doing that.
So-
They're gonna-
So-
They are taking it away and
And saying, we'll write them all and be
So and I made-
consistent
and I made a
across
comment
each.
to
One size
one-
fits all.
So I'll
yeah.
answer that in the most unbiased way I can. I'll just give you a straight answer, okay?
each
No, I'm just
town
serious.
is
I'll give you a
different.
straight answer. So we're a Dillon Rule state. So the bills that are coming through the House and the Senate right now, there's people on both sides.
Right.
These are bipartisan bills. If you look at that roll calls, they're bipartisan.
Yep.
They believe Londonderry, for example, isn't one of the towns that's a problem. It's certain towns in New Hampshire that want to exclude certain people from coming, and there's people on both sides that believe that the state needs to tell these towns that they have to abide and allow people to come to move to their town. That's the most unbiased I can give you. That's the reason that the bills are coming. Whether you agree or not with that, that's up to you.
Is this socioeconomic sort of status, or is this?
No, it's some towns.
it-
I'm not going to name them here, but some towns have zoning that basically says you have to have so much acreage to put a house on.
It's not-
Right, 2
Okay,
acres.
and the state says that's so. Certain people in the state are saying we don't think that's realistic. You need to have a more realistic size. That's the most unbiased way I can give you. That's the straight up. And then you kind of, so towns like Londonderry, some of these bills don't affect Londonderry because our zoning is already set up for that, but some do.
In support of what Ron said, example is, some of the towns you couldn't
It's
put
the
a
most unbiased I give you.
prefab house on the line.
Come on.
And I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's an unbiased reason. That's just the straight up
So,
answer. Yeah.
Just
I was
just so we know,
Yeah.
that's really out of our purview. I think it's good
Yeah.
conversation to know what's going
Yeah.
on because it does have some side effects that affect us. But
Absolutely.
I would rather have that topic debated in the hallway after the
Absolutely.
meeting.
No.
So,
Where, your presentation is on the 13th?
Yep,
Where
at 6
and
p.m. at the library.
6 PM library.
There's a couple presentations going on in the state on the 13th, but
It's,
Just you?
it's the
No.
13th or the 15th?
May
You said
13th, right?
13th.
May 13th, yeah.
May
Yeah, a week
13th,
from
6
tonight.
p.m.
6
the
p.m.
library.
at the library in the basement.
Basement.
He said six.
Just you?
6 p.m. in the library.
Who's
And again-
doing the
Is it you and
presentation?
Christine?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
So, and the reason I brought it up was,
Yeah.
again, this opinion, we can discuss in the hall, other
Yeah.
things we can do.
that's fine.
However, without getting into too much detail, there are some definite zoning things that would affect the amount of utilities that we would have to provide with these changes.
Yeah.
Okay? That's it. End of,
Yeah.
end of story.
great, thank you.
Yeah.
Martha?
No, I have nothing, thank you.
Mike?
Pass.
Sort of utility adjacent, if you think of the town forests as a natural utility. My wife and I just moved up here a couple years ago from living down in Boston in the city. We have a couple acres, I think 2.5 or so acres, and I'm wanting to make sure that I am a good steward of the forest. And I learned that the state has a resource where each county has a county forester, and they will come out and teach you how to take care of your forest, which I just thought is the coolest thing in the world. So we're having him come to my neighborhood if I guess the question is that something that this committee thinks would be interesting to put on the website as, it's not energy and it's not water, but it's being a steward of our natural resources. And there's an option for residents to make sure that they're being good stewards of the natural resources. Is that something that?
I think it's more
a s-
conservation.
Yeah.
Oh, yep,
We do have a
absolutely correct.
conservation commission.
Can I just add though, Jeff, I've been thinking there are some things that we align with conservation and we bleed in together.
Yeah.
But I think your thinking is on the right track because having a healthy forested ecosystem can actually help with contaminate and chemical contamination too, because plants are also known to uptake some of these chemicals and take them out of our water supply. So,
And out of the air.
and out of the air,
And
yeah.
water
So,
filtration.
so I mean, I think that's a great idea, and maybe we should, in the future, think about a conversation between our committees and.
Do you
I love
know
the
that?
idea of conversations between committees. I love that idea.
We happen to have a distinguished member of the Conservation Commission on our committee as well, so.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. And what I would try to figure out is how can we publicize this, with only or much time. When is he coming?
Oh, it's his job. He'll come out when we ask him.
Oh, you
He's
haven't
coming
set
to-
it up yet.
No. He's coming to my neighbor. He'll come to my house. He'll come. But it's his job to go around and teach people how to be good stewards of the forest.
Right.
But
It's more that the service is available.
the service is available, and I'm collecting neighbors. We're going to try to get 10 neighbors to come and.
Yep.
Because we each have 2 or 3 acres.
Don't cut down all the dead trees or you'll kill the woodpeckers.
Yep.
Well, I cut down a bunch of
they're
small
big.
trees, and then I realized I had no idea what I was doing, so I was like, I better call a guy. But these are like little bitty,
Big PLAs.
scrubby trees.
But yeah, if you
But-
can, once you get the dates settled, let us know, and then we can help publicize it maybe. Or at least we need to get it.
Or at
get
least
it in the
publicize the
paper.
service for sure.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
this guy, he was very eager to come out and help and very excited, and he's made a career out of being a forester. So
Why don't you send that information?
I'll send
to
that
Mike?
here, and
Yeah, I mean, I know all about it.
Oh, okay.
I probably, who is it now?
I don't know. I'll
Yeah,
check my email.
It's okay,
I just thought it was very
probably know
cool.
him.
No, great.
I just
It's
thought it was very cool.
typically, it's people that have 40, 50, 100 acres that, that work with them, but
That's what
I
I'm
think
collecting.
he's
yeah.
thrilled to Dickens that, a little humble homeowner with 2, 3 acres is wanting to work with him, so that's great.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. Chipmunks and squirrels, we got
Anything else?
That's it.
Yeah.
Ray?
Chipmunks.
You had to ask, didn't you?
Front steps.
I don't have to.
Oh,
Go to
okay.
Ron?
So, no? Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Go ahead.
No, you- Good,
Do
Ray.
you want to skip to him? Go ahead.
Ray, go ahead.
Okay, look. This kind of gets to a little bit to the master plan, but the town of Londonderry should have a natural resource inventory, okay? A lot of towns do. Londonderry, I think, is a little lacking in that respect, but it's very important, okay? Not only for forest and so forth, which are also important, wetland, what's in the ground, and water sources. Londonderry happens to be in a hydrological area of concern. What that means is Londonderry is an area where water runs off from a high elevation, Auburn, Manchester, and so forth. And in addition to that, it's what's in the ground, okay? Geologically, what's in the ground. And there is currently 2025 Drinking Water and Groundwater Trust Fund Source Water Protection Grant Round is open, and upcoming webinar Source of Water Protection. I think that someone should be involved in that. Mike?
I'm aware of that.
Oh, okay.
We use that program to conserve the land that's right behind us.
Yes.
And it covers, I would say, a good half of the town, and ironically, it's the half that's also covered in PFAS. It's a fairly competitive program. In fact, Aaron, if that was here before, administered it. The trouble is you need a willing landowner.
Well, wait a minute. There is some town-owned land that is also included in that.
Oh, not a lot, all of Musquash, for example.
Well, yeah, but this is most of northern Londonderry.
What's the thread? I'd lost the thread on what the whole topic is that you're talking to.
Money's available.
There's $10,000 available if you want to put in for it,
Okay.
which is a small amount of money,
Yeah, it's not
but it could be used to do a study. So I think it's something perhaps we should, and the other thing is, personally, I think the town of Londonderry ought to have a water commission. A permanent water commission, okay? As a lot of other towns do.
Yep.
Because when we're talking about water sources in the future, what do we got here? What is in the ground? Geologically, all that information is available, and I think we should take advantage of it.
I think that's an interesting policy question that's going to be coming up in the very near future. And it's a policy question. There's pros and cons.
Well, yeah, I just think that we can have some effect on what we discuss with,
Well, I would think it'd be up to us to figure out what we think is the right way to go. And then we would present that. I'm not going to say it's the wrong way or the right way. I don't have the data.
yeah, but I think, we can
We
maybe
should have the
discuss it
conversation. Yep.
and think about it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Ron?
I will pass.
John? Good. No public comment. Our next meeting is Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025. And is there any other business that we want to talk about before we adjourn? I would accept a motion for adjournment.
So move.
I'll second.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.